All right, everybody, welcome back to Bare Bones Talk. A lot of stuff going on right now. We have the first vote on the impeachment charges has come, and looks like the voting may actually have finished on the second one because it looks like he's in trouble as far as the House of Representatives goes, which is a major, major deal in the United States because this is only the third time a sitting president has been impeached. So that's quite an event. The people on the political left think that this is a very important step toward removing him from office and that it's very justified. The people on the right seem to be incredibly against it as a sort of party lines divide on the vote, um, which is surprising because, in terms of what evidence exists, it's pretty obvious that Trump has abused his powers as president of the United States. And with the Republicans pretty much unanimously voting not to impeach, it sends a clear message that they don't really care about the rule of law as much as they care about winning in this vote process, which is a very dangerous precedent. And the expectation is that under Mitch McConnell, that the Senate, when this trial happens next year, are just going to vote down any charges against him and acquit him without paying any attention to the evidence or to the facts. So, what we've got here is a temporary victory for the Democratic Party having won the impeachment vote, but it's not likely to stick. And Copter, welcome. I see you're here to be a goofball as usual, but that's okay. If you want to vote for Trump in 2020, you're welcome to do so, but that's not the issue at hand tonight. The issue at hand tonight is whether or not Trump is fit to be president and if he does or does not deserve to be removed from office. There will also be some other stuff we'll probably talk about if we can get to it, but this is the big topic of the day and of the hour. So that's where we're going. um, and the interesting thing is, I had really hoped early on that Trump would prove. Well, okay, I'm glad to hear you're not being serious there. I had hoped early on that Trump would prove to be less of a danger and less of an abuser of power than he turned out to be. When a president is elected, you always want them to turn out to be the best version of themselves, and that's just not how things turned out with Trump, which I guess isn't really surprising. The man has a decades long track record of being a fairly awful human being. And it's not shocking that that would persist into his presidency because the man has a massive ego on display at all times, and it seems to be the uh, driving force behind just about everything he does. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but he seems to me to exhibit a lot of the symptoms of what's called narcissistic personality disorder, um, where he sees himself as the sole and central figure in the universe and everybody else as being either a supporting character there for his benefit or just subhuman in general. And that's pretty scary when you think about a guy who's the president of the single largest superpower on the planet and, has nuclear launch authority and things like that. So I'm kind of hoping actually that a Trump supporter will show up tonight and explain to me why they think it's justifiable to ignore this guy's obvious crimes and vote party lines to stop impeachment and to acquit him when he so clearly has committed abuses of power and obstruction of Congress. But until someone actually, take the football away. I don't think we're that lucky. I think the president has to have it near them in case there's actually, and I hate to use this term, but a legitimate reason for its use. But so I was kind of hoping a Trump supporter would explain that because I cannot fathom it. And one of the things about it that's such a horror is that Trump has now been impeached, which means the people who are seeing him clearly have stood up and said, this guy is not fit to be in office. He's committed high crimes and misdemeanors. He needs to be unseated from the Oval Office, removed from the presidency, etc. And next year, there's going to be a trial in the Senate, which Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, has already said he's basically going to not care what the facts are and he's going to arrange it so Trump is acquitted. And if that happens, it sets an enormously dangerous precedent that says the President of the United States can do anything, no matter how wrong. They can hang our allies out to dry to be slaughtered in large numbers by the Russians. They can collude with foreign powers to get elected. They can abuse their power. They can obstruct Congress. They can refuse subpoenas. They can refuse to obey the law in any way they choose, and there will be no consequences. And that effectively will make him dictator of the United States, because there will be no action he can take that will actually be punished or refused by the government. And that's very horrifying. That is absolutely horrifying, because it doesn't just apply to him. It applies to any president who comes after him, assuming that Trump doesn't change the law to make himself president for life, which he has already said he will do if he can. And which he has a tremendous motive to do, because he's already been told by the Department of Justice that the crimes they know about will be charged against him the minute he's no longer in office, because the only thing stopping him from being charged with criminal offenses right now is the fact that he's a sitting president of the United States, and that the guy he appointed to lead the Justice Department broke with tradition and said no sitting president can be charged with any crime until after a successful impeachment and removal from office. So as long as he stays president, he's immune from the consequences of his actions in the criminal sense. And if he can't be impeached, it makes him immune from the consequences of his actions in any sense whatsoever. So, he has enormous incentive to try to appoint himself president for life, whether that means just becoming dictator, appointing himself president for life, removing by executive order any semblance of term limits. He's tremendously motivated to consolidate power and make sure he never leaves the presidency. And the world is different now than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, because of the advent and proliferation of nuclear weapons. Had the United States done what it's doing now, and had a dictatorship been on the horizon like it is now, the other democratic and modern industrial nations of the world might ally together and threaten military action or take military action to save the citizens of the United States if, in fact, a dictatorship came to pass. But because the United States has the biggest or second biggest nuclear arsenal on the planet, I'm not sure which has the biggest, Russia or the United States, but we're one of the two. Nobody will do that because, the president, he's proven himself to be an unhinged kind of lunatic. And they would legitimately have reason to fear that if they took any stand against him, that he would simply nuke their countries into being radioactive glass. He doesn't need a red button any more than I need a 50 cal. True. The way he eats McDonald's, his life won't be any longer than a second term would be. Maybe, maybe not. But the amount of damage he can do in that time is enormous. I mean, look at what he's done so far. He's already created a circumstance where the partisan Senate is literally about to hand him an acquittal the minute that trial starts, that will declare the presidency the supreme ruler of the United States and completely immune to any punitive action, criminal liability, civil liability, anything. That is literally the destruction of the United States as we know it, because the United States, as it is designed, is supposed to have 3 co-equal branches of government, not a dictator in the White House. I got to take a sip of my beverage here. So, the amount of damage he could do is enormous. He's already packed the Supreme Court 5-4 when it should have been 5-4 in the opposite direction, because they stole Obama's ability to nominate a justice in the last year of his term. And if he gets to be president for another 4 years, there are several more justices who simply will not survive that long, even if they try to stay in office, in their positions as justices until another president is elected. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg is only staying on the bench to prevent Trump from replacing her with a hardcore Republican. So if he gets another 4 years, 2, perhaps 3 of the current sitting justices are going to retire, and Trump would be able to stack the court 7-2 or 8-1 for conceivably the next 30 to 40 years, turning the United States into a hardline Republican nation for the rest of your natural life, more than the rest of my natural life, for the life of the girl that you like and her kid. They are going to be living under what amounts to a Republican dictatorship if he manages to stay in office another 4 years. So there will be no undoing this. And that's what's terrifying, is that Republican voters are all behind this, thinking this is a great thing, because their brains are fixated on the idea of hating the left, of hating Democrats, rather than realizing how hard they're shooting themselves in the foot by doing this. And I've said this before, and I feel it needs repeating. Once the Republicans have absolute power, if they get rid of everybody that the Republican voting base hates, what then? Who do they think the Republican politicians will turn on to create an enemy for their base to hate once they've gotten rid of everybody that they currently dislike? The gay people are gone, the left-wing people are gone, Jewish people are gone, Muslims are gone, whoever it is that Republicans hate are all gone. Once they have nothing left but basically heterosexual, white, cisgendered, male and female evangelical Christians who are all Republican, they'll have to start finding ways to drive wedges into that crowd, and one of that, part of that demographic will then be the enemy, and they will be on the receiving end of the very hatred and animosity and legal troubles and threats of deportation and whatever else. The gulags, whatever the country has become by then, will be directed at some of the very Republicans who helped put it into place, and they don't see it coming. Because these people are not students of history. They don't understand the idea that if you don't remember your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But they can even see this kind of thing happening right now in the world they live in. They can see it happening in Russia. They can see it happening in China. They can see it happening in North Korea. When dictators seize power, the people who put them in power are no safer than anybody else. But the Republican voting base doesn't see it. They think that Trump is their friend. He's not. They think that Trump is their ally. He's not. They think that Trump and his political views will never hurt them. They will. There's no sanity to this. None at all. So if, we've taken the only step we can, which is to impeach the guy and try to remove him from office, which does have its own dangers, by the way, because if he is removed from office, the guy who steps up is Mike Pence, and he is arguably more dangerous in some ways than Trump, because he's actually a competent political figure. He's not a crazy person. Well, I mean, he's acts a little bonkers in some ways about, like, not being willing to be alone with a woman. But he understands politics better than Trump does. He understands how not to piss off your allies better than Trump does. And he is, on top of everything that's wrong with Trump, Pence is also a seriously hardcore religious zealot who would immediately begin trying to legislate his religious beliefs into law through his allegiance with the Republicans in Congress. So there's no winning this. But if we don't manage to oust Trump and we just roll over and admit defeat, we may as well all start accepting that a Republican dictatorship has arrived and that we're going to be living under it as political prisoners and, get disappeared in the dark and whatever else horrific stuff happens in dictatorships. Because if we allow that to happen, that's what we're going to have. Period. End of story. And Trump is a bad person in every measurable sense. He's deceptive, deceitful, he lies. When he first started out his real estate empire, he demonstrated bigotry against African Americans by denying them the right to live in or live in his properties, right? He wouldn't rent to people of color. Off to the gulag. That's basically what would happen. I've actually told my wife that we should probably have an exit strategy for leaving the country if Trump establishes a dictatorship here, but there are too many family ties, too many people we'd have to leave behind. So we're kind of stuck in that regard. But the president legitimately is a very strange person who acts very childish at times. He's not articulate, he's not presidential, he doesn't represent the United States with dignity or honesty or integrity. but he could well end up the Hitler of the United States. There's no other real way to express it. And yet, still, I advertised this on Twitter, and I hashtagged a lot of stuff. Republican, Democrat, politics, news. I even used the @ symbol real Donald Trump. Like, I was hoping somebody with a Republican allegiance would show up here and explain their point of view, or at least try to. But there's been nothing. Like, literally nothing. Nobody has come forward to offer any kind of rational explanation for this, any reasoned, item. I was listening to the final debates and the beginnings of the votes this afternoon and evening while I was out collecting dinner for the family. And it was surreal. You would hear a Democrat come to the podium and they would say something to the effect of, the evidence says this, and it's imperative for the sake of American democracy and the security of the republic that we remove this guy because he's done A, B, C, and D. And then you'd have Republicans show up. They don't even try to rebut the charges. They don't try to refute the charges. They don't try to provide evidence the charges are wrong. They just start making fun of Democrats as if that actually vindicates or exonerates the president. And it doesn't. It just shows they have literally nothing they can say to defend the man, so they try to attack the messengers. And people at the level of governance where they're in the Congress, whether, when the representatives in the House of Representatives should be better than that. They should have more dignity, they should have more integrity, more honesty than to do that. But they don't. They just don't. They don't care. They don't care that they're being deceptive. They don't care they're issuing propaganda. They don't care that they are literally ridiculing their compatriots instead of actually addressing the matter at hand. They just do not care. We're at a point now where you can't look at anybody who's a Republican, either in government or as a voter, who supports this man, who supports Trump, and still see them as good people. You just can't. Because the stuff he's done wrong is so horrible, and the damage he's done to this country is so horrible, that if you support him, you are showing a serious moral failing for which there can be no excuse. You vote we nuke the planet and let the next species have a go at things. So let the rats and roaches fight it out. Is that your plan, Copter? I've heard worse plans, honestly. I mean, I have to say that might actually be preferable to a Republican dictatorship. So let's take a look at something. This is where is it? There's a document. Where did I put this? Okay, so this is the warning signs of fascism. I'm going to try to find a big image of this. Tools, size, large. I guess we don't have that in large size, but so one of this particular list is actually available at the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and I don't know if you can actually see it. I'm going to put it up here. So it's this list right here. And if you can't see it because the text is too small in the image, these are the early warning signs of fascism, or in this case, what would amount to a Republican dictatorship, right? Powerful and continuing nationalism is one of these things. Nationalism is this bizarre belief that your country is perfect and always right and the best at everything. It's not patriotism. It's this absolutist belief that your country is always right. It can do no wrong. It could slaughter children. It would still be morally right. That kind of thing. So that is a massive clue right there. And the right wing, especially the voting base of the right wing, is very nationalistic at the moment. Disdain for human rights. Again, look at what they did to kids, and families crossing the border. They would separate them and put them in cages. Clearly violations of human rights of anything remotely resembling humanity, and they still did it, and kids are still in cages. Identification of enemies and scapegoats as a unifying cause. All you need to do is look at Trump's rhetoric, watch what he tweets. He makes enemies out of the Democrats, he makes enemies out of the press, he makes enemies out of immigrants. Anybody he can get his voting base to hate, he will use as a scapegoat. Supremacy of the military. That's another big one going on. The military is hero worshipped when it does not deserve it. And that's not to try to be mean to people in uniform. It's just that the military, in and of itself, is not a moral instrument. It's an instrument of violence. That's what it's there for. That's why everybody who goes into the military is taught how to fight. It's because it is an instrument of using violence to reinforce or back up political will. And in that regard, the United States has a very effective military, but the act of enforcing political will through violence is not a moral thing in and of itself. When you are using it to enact a political will to save the Jewish people from the Holocaust, that is a moral thing because the reason for its use was moral. But the military in and of itself is not moral or immoral. The reasons that it is put into violent use are what determines the morality or immorality of the institutions of the militaries of the world. So that doesn't just apply to the American military. It applies to any military. And right now in the United States, we hero worship the military as if it is always good, is always right, if everybody, as if everybody in it's a noble hero, instead of seeing it for what it actually is, which is, again, an instrument of violence used to enforce the political will of the leaders of the nation. Copter says, who needs a large military when you have a big red button? That is a very important point to make, actually. So the purpose of the military, in the eyes of the founders, and again, they wanted nothing more than state militias, which are the current incarnation of the National Guard, because they didn't want a large standing army, and they were expressly against the United States getting involved in foreign wars. All they wanted, the military of the United States to do was defend us from outside invaders. They did not want to project force into other nations. And right now, we have such a large nuclear arsenal that nobody would be dumb enough to invade the United States. You could not mass troops on our border without them getting nuked into oblivion. We don't even need a standing army to keep our borders safe from being invaded by any foreign power. Any army that tries to mass troops and vehicles and build air bases and such on our border is just going to get turned into radioactive, rubble. And if that's not what we're going to do with those missiles, why do we even have them? We should dismantle them and get rid of them as a global agreement if that's not their intended use. And you can make an argument for dismantling them anyway based on the stuff we talked about in the other show, where even a limited nuclear exchange somewhere far away is likely to end human civilization as we know it. But we certainly should not be idolizing the military as if everybody in it is a hero, as if the entire entity is a hero, because it's not. It's an entity. It's an organization. It doesn't have morality. The only morals that it has are the ones determined by how it's put to use and for what reasons. If you want to hero worship somebody in uniform, try your local firefighter or your local paramedic and emergency medical technician and ambulance crew, because those people heroically save lives all the time. That's pretty heroic. The Coast Guard would be a branch of the military you could be a lot more confident in hero worshiping because they rescue people at sea all the time. That's their job. Let's see, rampant sexism. Anybody who does not think sexism is a problem in the United States is blind or willfully ignorant. It is obviously an issue. If you turn the nukes into nuclear fuel rods for power plants, why not? It's as good a use for it as any, Copter. If you want a real eye-opening thing, and Copter, you could do this with your girl, ask them how old they were the first time a man said or did something sexually inappropriate in their presence. And you will crap yourself when you hear how young women are when they first encounter this stuff. It's terrifying. Ask them how often they have had men treat them with disdain. Ask them how often they've had their ideas dismissed or stolen by a guy. It'll blow your mind if you look into that. Controlled mass media. This is part of Trump's actual strategy, just so you know. Before he got elected, he was already attacking the media, and when one of the reporters asked him, he said, why are you doing this? He literally said, I do this to discredit you so that when you have bad things to say about me, people won't believe you. Okay, that's exactly what he said. Um, Trump is trying to discredit any media that disagrees with him. He is trying to circumvent the media by going directly to the people through Twitter. He does not stand for an honest and unimpeded media presence. So well, don't ask her that in public, but ask somebody who that's female that you trust and who will give you an honest answer, Copter. But yeah, he's definitely bent on controlling everything about how the public gets its information from the media. Obsession with national security, again, build a wall, build a wall, build a wall, he screams, keep out the Muslims, immigration bans. He is obsessed with that kind of stuff. Religion and government intertwined. Without the backing of the religious right wing, he wouldn't even be president. He is surrounded by people who are religious and who he sees no problem with, having give him advice on how to mix religion and government. And he does not do anything to stymie that in the legislative process. He's completely okay with all that. Corporate power is protected. That should be blatantly obvious that it's happening. Trump gives tax cuts to the wealthy. He's very friendly with big business, especially if it profits him. Copter says, religion is a scam, change my mind. You're not going to get me arguing with that. I happen to agree with you on that. So somebody else will have to take up the banner and defend religion to you, because I have no defense for it. Disdain for intellectuals in the arts. Trump speaks and tweets and such at like a third grade level. He is not a very intelligent man. He does hold people smarter than him in disdain. He mocks the idea of people who are smarter than him. He believes he is a stable genius when he is anything but. So he does not appreciate anything that makes him look dumb, even though he is. And he basically dumps on the intellectuals of the world. Obsession with crime and punishment. I mean, this is a guy who taught his masses to scream, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. He is obsessed with that kind of stuff, and he wants to punish anybody who he feels has wronged him. Rampant cronyism and corruption. This is a guy who appointed close members of his own family to high-ranking, high-security clearance government jobs, even in the White House, when they have no business being there at all. And he appoints his best friends to positions. He's pretty much the definition of a cronyist, so not much you can do with there. Fraudulent elections. This is a guy who knowingly got help from a foreign power to get elected, and has said literally that he would take information and help from foreign governments in the next election. So you've got, all the boxes are checked there. Saying, here's what Trump is doing, here's how this compares to how dictatorships happen. And he's like following that roadmap to a T. So it's very scary. It's very, very scary. Let's take a look at some other images here, if I can find something else that's a good one. Yada, yada, yada. So, 8 steps to becoming a dictator. Crave power. He loves it. Have military experience, or feel as if you've got it. So, he believes that he's a fine commander-in-chief. He did, basically draft dodge with his, shin splints or something? Bone spurs? Whatever that was. Be self-centered. Hard to imagine a guy more self-centered than Donald Trump. He's the next Stalin. He certainly seems to be headed in that direction, Copter. Espouse non-mainstream beliefs. If the country is built on promoting equality among all peoples, promote the opposite. He has been doing that for decades, and he continues to do it while serving as president. Develop your charisma. You can fool 100% of your supporters 100% of the time. Ask any Trump supporter if they believe he always tells the truth, or if he's a rampant liar, and they will pretty much all tell you that they think he's honest, and they'll say things like, he just says what everybody's thinking, Hail Stalin, Copter says. Let's see. Build a cadre of supporters. He definitely has that. Your friends should be those who depend on you for your rewards, which they do, while your enemies are cut off from them. And, Trump has talked about denying press passes to media outlets that don't basically just agree with him in all respects. Trust no one more than you have to. Trump doesn't display a trust of anybody. And have an easily identifiable enemy. Trump is very big on making sure that there are people out there to think of as the other, the bad guy, the enemy. So, he basically, if there is a list of how to bring a dictator to power, Trump is basically following the checklist to a T, or has already completed the checklist and is moving on to even more dangerous stuff. So I found this interesting. I found on PolitiFact a giant list of ways Trump has lied, even recently. Trump says House Intelligence Chair Adam Schiff made up the conversation. He lied. If he didn't do that in the halls of Congress, he'd be thrown in jail. He did it in the halls of Congress. He's given immunity. Also, that's not true. Schiff didn't make up the conversations. Today, I opened a major Apple manufacturing plant in Texas. No, he didn't. They never thought that I was going to release that call, and I really had no choice because Adam Schiff made up a call. His own transcript proves that there was a call. I mean, come on. Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and the rest of the corrupt Democrats, see how they throw in insults? They don't state facts. Made a promise to their crazy, another insult, left-wing base that they would impeach me even before I took office. Also not true. Many of the people in DACA, no longer very young, are far from angels. Some are very tough, hardened criminals. No. Yeah. So, I mean, Trump says he's cutting illegal immigration in half. He's not. It's interesting. I actually shared a bit in my last show about how Trump has actually increased a form of illegal immigration called birth tourism. Copter, I don't know if you were here for that. Were you here for the show where I talked about the birth tourism thing? Because if you weren't, you're going to find this hilariously fascinating. So let me know, and if you haven't, I'll go over it again. I might go over it again anyway, but I'm curious to know if you were here for the last stream and heard it already, so I don't, hit you with it twice in a row without knowing that. But anyway, yeah, so birth tourism is when people cross the border intentionally when pregnant in order to give birth here in the States so that their kid gets citizenship and they can piggyback on that or get the kid the benefits that come from American citizenship, etc. The derogatory term for those children is anchor babies, and that's a horrible thing to call anybody. But there are actually people who come to the United States to do that. But contrary to what Trump would have you believe, the majority of them are very rich people from other countries coming here, and there was a woman busted recently for doing that who had, at the time they had arrested her, made several $1,000,000 doing this, like arranging birth tourism. It was an Asian woman, and the company she ran was named something like YouWinUSATravel.com or something like that, where she would bring rich Asian politicians and doctors and people like that here to the United States for an exorbitant fee to give them the opportunity to have the kid in the United States. And the really messed up part, and this is where it gets darkly humorous, is that she would coach these people on how to get by the immigration folks and what to put on the papers and what to say when they were asked why they're coming to the States, etc. And one of the key ways, this is so wrong on so many levels, one of the key ways that you get the immigration people to just let you in without questioning is you tell them you're on a vacation to spend time at a Trump property. Like a Trump resort. And they go, okay. Just let you through. So Trump himself has literally provided the mechanism by which these people are sneaking into the United States to do something he says he doesn't want them to do. He literally has become their key to the whole process. So, how do you like them apples, That's just bonkers. But yeah, I guess if you want to come into the United States and not have the immigration people get too mad at you, say you're there to do something that will make Trump money, and, in you go. Welcome to America, stamp, stamp, It's So, yep. Now you know. Let's see. CNN, Donald Trump tells the lie of the year. PolitiFact checks the biggest whopper told by a politician. As PolitiFact puts it, the distinction is awarded to a statement that is more than ridiculous and wrong. The lie of the year, the only time PolitiFact uses the word lie, speaks to a falsehood that proves to be of real consequence and gets repeated in a virtual campaign to undermine an accurate narrative. Past winners include the online efforts to discredit the gun control activism of students of Parkland, Florida, and Barack Obama's false pledge in 2013 that if you like your health care plan, you can keep it. This year's biggest lie, President Donald Trump's repeated assertions that the Ukraine whistleblower got the story about his phone call with the Ukrainian president all wrong, saying, quote, since the September 26th release of the whistleblower complaint about his call with the Ukraine President Vladimir Zelensky, Trump has insisted more than 80 times that the whistleblower's account is fake, fraudulent, incorrect, total fiction, made up, and so wrong. Despite what Trump claims, the whistleblower got the call almost completely right. So yeah, Trump lies all the time, and he tells big lies, whoppers of lies. Yeah, King Trump. Oof. So yeah, it's cranky to pants time. What do we have here? Trump rallied supporters in Michigan on Wednesday night as the House voted to impeach him, declaring it doesn't really feel like we're being impeached. Unreal. Associated Press, let's refresh this. So, yep, both charges were carried for impeachment. Just a hell of a hard time to be in the United States, people. Just a very, very bad time. Hello, Lollipoposaurus. We have been discussing the impeachment process and Trump's many dishonest moments. It's been quite a ride today, and we were discussing how the impeachment may actually set the stage for Trump to become the dictator of the United States, which is a frightening prospect. Just to catch you up if you haven't heard this one yet, is that since the Republicans in Senate have made it clear that they don't plan to convict Trump no matter what, that the impeachment process will basically end with an acquittal for him in the Senate, which will prove that nothing he does can get him in trouble, that he cannot be removed from office, that he cannot be punished for anything that he does, and that will effectively make him dictator for the remainder of his presidency, because there will be simply no way to stop anything horrible that he does. You know, and with him being in position to stack the Supreme Court even further, and, you know, the impeachment process actually making Trump voters want to vote for him even more, the whole process may backfire and wind up making Trump the de facto king of the United States. Yeah, Copter is very big on the idea of nuking the planet and letting the next species take over. Can't say that that's the best option, but still might be better than a Republican dictatorship. So how are you doing, Lollipoposaurus? Haven't seen you here in a few days. You know, always interested in hearing what you have to say. Like I said to Copter earlier, I was actually kind of hoping that a Trump supporter would stop by tonight and try to explain to us how they justify trying to defend Donald Trump when his actions are so clearly in violation of his oath of office and the Constitution and the law and everything else. But so far, none has shown up to attempt to explain that. You know, I would love to hear what they have to say, but I kind of fear that if one shows up, it would be more to rant and rave than anything else. Sad and quite possible. That's how democracy has been defeated in other places. How very true, Lollipoposaurus. And you know, and I said earlier, I'll say it again for your benefit in case you haven't heard me mention this before. It's self-defeating for the Republican voters, because once the dictatorship is established, they'll be no safer than anybody else. They think they will be, but they won't be. You know, if they get the Republican utopia that they want, where all the bad people, you know, the brown people and the non-Christian people and the non-white people and the non-conservative people, are all exiled or killed or imprisoned or deported or whatever, that a governance group, a politician, a dictator, whatever, who got to power by satisfying his people's need to have an enemy that they have to defeat, will need a new enemy. And that enemy will have to come from the ranks of his own followers when there's nobody left. Copter says, I need a whiteboard and markers to draw out my idea to steal the football. Yeah, okay, that sounds like the kind of thing that won't work. Just gonna say, he's constantly surrounded by Secret Service guys. You would not succeed in stealing anything from anywhere near the president, but, it's funny to think about, but don't even attempt it. I need a Trump mask and suit. A big bad hairpiece, too, don't forget that. I don't think you'd fool anybody, though. I really don't. Oh, God. It's funny, though, to think about. If you do actually get a Trump costume for, like, Halloween use or something, take a picture and send it to me. I would love to see that. That would be kind of hilarious. Oh, man. So, yeah, looking at the vote totals here, like the picture on the Associated Press, it looks like 2 Democrats voted no. One did not vote, and one was, I'm not sure what prez means in that circumstance. The Republicans, unified, all voted no, and one independent voted yes, which I'm guessing would be Bernie Sanders, unless he's currently listed as a Democrat. I believe he still shows as independent. Or no, he's a senator, so he wouldn't be there. Yeah. But yeah, it's a hell of a day in the United States. I'm kind of wondering what other countries around the world have to say about this. In England, Boris Johnson is causing problems similar to the ones we're facing here. So I don't know what they would have to say about it. The argument you're making now is why I think your earlier statement might be more likely. Trump seems the type to see the reaction of his base about this and think he needs to one-up it, and that can only go poorly. Yeah. Agreed. Gonna casually trade the football for the PO2 with North Korea. So, for those who are not War Thunder players, the PO2 is a plane that you can fly in that game that Copter seems to really enjoy flying, and in a lot of respects is a very overpowered aircraft in the context of that video game. I'm trying to clarify this, Copter, because the stuff you're saying could have probably actually get you in trouble. So you probably shouldn't say things like that. I don't know where the delineation is where it becomes illegal, but you probably don't want to even joke about trying to steal the nuclear football. You can joke about wanting to impersonate the president and, like, goof around, but, actually committing a crime is something you probably shouldn't even consider. Oh, God, okay. So, what else is going on today? I don't know, I'm so overwhelmed with the whole impeachment thing, that we have a guy in office who is so obviously criminal, so obviously dishonest, so obviously guilty of obstruction of Congress, so obviously guilty of abuse of power, that it blows my mind that his supporters refuse to see it. Because you have to know that if it had been Obama doing these things, they wouldn't just be calling for impeaching the guy, they'd be calling for lynching Obama. Simba, I don't even know what that means, and I'm pretty sure that the meaning is a bad one, but okay. Excuse me. The avatar I'm using always freezes when I take a drink. Did you ever decide on a stream schedule? I seem to keep missing you. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starting at 9 o'clock. I missed the target last time because my avatar was acting up and the facial recognition software wouldn't start. So all you got was like this dead still thing. Like that. And then when I finally got it going, the movements were so exaggerated, I looked like a bobblehead doll whose neck had been crushed and put on a hinge. 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So 9 p.m. New York time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I do a gaming stream on another channel from 7 to just shy of 9, and then I come over here to do this stream at 9 p.m. Oh, it's a meme. Okay, Mel Simba. I already have one. I already have what? Oh, you already have a PO2, yes, in the game. Hello, Pearl Joker. Welcome. Glad to have you guys around here. I am still working on the technical aspects of this, trying to use Stream Elements instead of Stream Labs for this one to keep it separate from my other channel. But I haven't worked out all the kinks of using Stream Elements yet, so you'll have to forgive me if I don't have all the techie background stuff worked out yet. Um, I also haven't used a professional artist for any of the stream channel art, so like the skull is just a handmade thing that I did in Microsoft Paint and whatever else. So the art is kind of trash, but I didn't want to invest a ton of money in this. I just wanted to do it for the informational value. I had an actual PO2 and a few hundred bottles, or had need and 100 bottles of Russian vodka. I forget who said it, but there was somebody once said it's amazing what Russians can do with a potato. Talking about vodka, I thought that was pretty funny. So yeah, apparently, Copter, both votes are in. Mel Simba, Pearl Joker, both votes are in. The House voted to impeach on both counts. The votes pretty much fell down party lines, with the Republicans unanimously voting no and the Democrats voting yes with a few holdouts. Um, so it's going to go to trial in the Senate next year, where the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has already made it clear that there will be no conviction no matter what the facts say. And other senators have literally said, and this, I forget which one it was, but they actually said this: I have no intention of acting as a fair juror in that case. Like, what? But that's what they said. I'm going to be like that guy who put a claymore on a Roomba. Okay. Who did what, Pearl? Who said they were going to make sure there was no conviction? Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. And one of the Republican senators, who was not Mitch McConnell, and I forget who it was, said he does not intend to be a fair juror. Lindsey Graham, yes, thank you, Lipoposaurus. I was going to say that, but I couldn't remember for sure, and I didn't want to just spit the name out without having some kind of confirmation. But yeah, Lindsey Graham is another crackpot. Completely partisan, completely detached from the truth or honesty or integrity or sincerity or, like, pick any positive adjective and he's probably nowhere near it. So, what are you going to do? That's the Republicans in the Senate for you. So, yeah. We're in deep crap here in the United States. We are literally one acquittal in that trial away from a dictatorship for Donald Trump. Because for those who are just joining the party, if he gets acquitted in the Senate of these charges, it will mean that nothing the House does to try to impeach him will stick, and it means he can do whatever he wants with no consequences, because the Republicans will simply never convict him of anything. A guy in Texas put a claymore loaded with rubber shot onto a Roomba for home defense. Okay. I think that was a gag going around. I don't think anybody actually put a claymore on that. But if you can find some article that says he did it for real, I think that was pretty amazing. Probably not very smart, but maybe amazing nonetheless. Okay, so what else is going on in the news before I work myself into any more of a tizzy over the impeachment thing? Like, almost half the stuff you're seeing on the Associated Press is Trump or impeachment related. It's crazy. Well, we do have the Democrat debate coming up. Mel Simba says feminist. What about feminism? What are you trying to say? I think the Democrat debate is tomorrow. And if you haven't cast a vote in my little informal poll down below this screen where it asks who you think should win the Democrat primary, I urge you all to click the name that you think should win. It was a horrible idea, but I'm interested in the idea of robotic home defense. And this is probably giving away a little bit about the general area that I live in, but I live not far from a company that makes a autonomous weapons system called the Crows 2, which is basically a robotic-mounted heavy machine gun emplacement that works on autopilot. Want to guess what's next for Tulsi? Tell me, what's next for Tulsi, Lollipoposaurus? Oh, interesting. Uber pays over $4 million to end a sex harassment probe. Guess I'm not ever calling an Uber. Holy shit. What the hell, man? AI controlled 50 cal. I know what I want for Christmas. Well, look up the Crows 2. CROWS 2. And there are videos of it being deployed on, like, I think they use it on the Israeli border, actually. And it just, like, kills anybody that approaches the border in certain areas. Not saying that's a good thing, by the way. I am not in favor of machines that can kill humans at will without human intervention. Yeah, that's a big oof, Simba. Copter says 10 out of 10. He wants one for Christmas. Oh, boy. I'm an optimist, so I'm hoping she says something about the reason behind her vote tonight. Was Tulsi one of the ones who voted against impeachment? I haven't looked at the actual vote registry yet. Put it on your roof. What exactly do you think would approach your house that would require that kind of defense to keep it away, Copter?
A squirrel!
My wife just yelled, a squirrel! Me. Simba's coming to your house. I think he wants to challenge your 50 cal. Oh, that's so bad. Police investigating incident at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. What's that about? Let's see what this is. Oh, she was the present one. Okay. She sort of abstained, huh? Chinese national arrested for illegally entering Mar-a-Lago. A Chinese national trespassed at President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago club Wednesday and was arrested when she refused to leave, police said. The second time this year a woman from that country has been charged with illicitly entering the Florida resort. Huh. Interesting. She was charged with loitering and prowling. Crazy. The stuff that happens, man. Stuff that happens. Present, huh? Yeah, I think I would like to know what was on Gabbard's mind when she did that. That seems to me to be something... Is she even still in the race? I've lost track of who has fallen away at this point. I need to get my list updated. But if she's still in the race, voting present for that would probably cost her any chance she has of moving forward. You gotta keep them trash pandas under control. Do you have a raccoon problem, Copter? As if you do have a wildlife problem at your property, what you ought to do is to consider a stream like the Texas Wildlife Stream, where the guy has those night vision cameras pointed out at his yard and people can watch the animals wander around in the dark all night. It's a very fascinating stream. Yeah, if anybody can find out if Tulsi Gabbard has made a statement explaining her vote of present, I would love to know. Not yet with an AI-controlled 50 cal, I can make a trash panda problem. Like I said, get a camera and turn it into a successful money-generating stream for you. Let's see. Let's see if we can search AP News. TULSI. Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard to skip debate even if she qualifies. Okay. Yeah, so she's on her last legs, apparently, as far as the campaign goes. If the Associated Press doesn't have a statement on why she voted present instead of actually casting a ballot, then I doubt anybody else will yet. But if anybody does find one, let me know. Excuse me for my sniffles. I am Sniffy McSniffleson. Okay. I am curious. Hold on a second. Does it work? Okay, so it brings you to a link to the commands list. Okay. Yeah, apparently, and according to that article I just saw the headline from, she says she's going to skip the debate tomorrow even if she qualifies, so we won't see her on stage, which is probably good for her. Honestly, if she's skipping the debate, it seems to me that she probably knew ahead of time she was going to vote present instead of casting a yes or no vote, and that would cause her to be basically the target of the night if she showed up on that stage. Because if she shows up on a debate stage tomorrow with the other Democrat candidates, they're all going to hammer her about why she didn't stand up to Trump. Yeah, there are a lot of candidates who are polling in like the 1 to 3% who probably need to just put an end to their campaigns. Yeah, it would go horribly. She would be destroyed on stage tomorrow if she showed up after that. People would probably be using words like traitor to the American people. There's no coming back from that. I would love to know what her motivation was. Like, did they blackmail her or something? Because she has not given any indicator that she was a Trump fan up till this point. I don't get what could possibly have motivated her. Yeah. Hang on just a second. New information coming in. One moment. CNN. Democratic presidential candidate Representative Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii voted present on both articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump on Wednesday, later slamming the process as politically motivated. Gabbard's vote did not jeopardize the easy House majority to charge Trump with abuse of power followed by obstruction of Congress, but the move aligned her with her previously wavering on impeachment, having run as the sole Democrat not in favor of an impeachment inquiry before deciding to support it. After doing my due diligence in reviewing the 658-page impeachment report, I came to the conclusion that I could not in good conscience vote either yes or no, Gabbard said, who declined to talk with reporters following her votes, said in a statement soon afterward. She added that she could not oppose impeachment because I believed President Trump is guilty of wrongdoing, nor could she back it because removal of a sitting president must not be the culmination of a partisan process fueled by tribal animosities that have so gravely divided our country. I'm going to pause in the quoting there. Yep, she just totally ended her campaign right there. Because, first of all, no Democrat should ever be saying something like this was a partisan process on the heels of saying, yes, he's guilty of that. Because it's not possible for this to be partisan on the part of the Democrats when he actually is guilty. What the Democrats are doing is literally just following the law. It's not partisan. The Republicans are being partisan by resisting the following of the law and the following of the facts. Continuing, Gabbard accused Republicans of having, quote, abdicated their responsibility to exercise legitimate oversight and instead blindly do the bidding of their party's leader, unquote, which is another mind-boggling thing for her to say if she didn't feel she could vote for impeachment. She also had harsh words for her fellow Democrats, arguing that their, quote, extreme rhetoric was never conducive to an impartial fact-finding process, unquote. No, honestly, considering what he's done, harsh language is completely warranted. She pointed to a censure resolution she had introduced that she said would, quote, send a strong message to this president and future presidents that their abuses of power will not go unchecked while leaving the question of removing Trump from office to the voters to decide, except censure means nothing. I am now convinced Gabbard is an idiot because anybody at that level of government who is not looking at the Republicans and realizing that telling them no bad dog is going to do anything and they believe that's going to work is a moron. The Republicans don't care what anybody else thinks. They don't care if you say, you're not doing the right thing. They're not going to care. Not gonna care. Let's see. The Hawaiian presidential candidate was not alone in opting not to vote along party lines on Wednesday. Democratic Rep. Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey and Colin Peterson of Minnesota voted against both articles, and Rep. Jared Golden of Maine voted no on the second article. Yeah, the guy from New Jersey actually said he's turning Republican, and his whole staff quit on him, which is not surprising. So he's basically a traitor to the American people. Gabbard announced in September she had changed her mind and supported an impeachment inquiry after looking at a transcript of the conversation between Trump and the Ukrainian president. On the campaign trail, she's expressed skepticism on impeachment. I've had concerns for a long time about impeachment being pursued for partisan reasons, she said earlier this month, noting that she did vote to authorize the inquiry. Pursuing impeachment for partisan reasons is something that will only further divide an already divided country, and it actually undermines our democracy. Bullshit. The only reason the country is divided is because the Republicans are dividing it, and they need to be stopped. It does not mean the Democrats are responsible for the divisive situation. All right, going backward to catch up on chat. Have you heard Trump says he'll probably also skip the general race debates? Yes. I talked about that in my last show. Not only does he say he's probably going to skip them, but he's probably going to organize his own that are run in a fixed environment where the fix is in for him, and the Democrats will basically get crapped on. So he says he's likely to skip the ones that are officially run because they're not going to be fixed in his favor, but he's not expressing it that way. Dude, I really need to get a 50 cal. No, you really don't. I want to smack a trash panda around from 2 miles away. No, that's disgusting. Don't do that. You would leave a red smear where the animal used to be. Lollipoposaurus, my opinion on a person doesn't dictate if that person's actions are criminal. That's why we have laws. True. Copter, Trump 2020 changed my mind. Don't be a doofus. Who is he going to debate, or is he just airing a rally? What he's saying he's going to skip are the debates for the presidential election against whoever the Democrat candidate is after the primary season is over. Because usually there are 3 presidential debates and 1 VP debate, and he says he's going to skip the presidential ones because he doesn't feel he would be treated fairly, which in Trump speak means the fix is not in on his side. So he doesn't want fair, he wants completely biased in his favor, and he's not going to get it from the organization that runs these debates because they are obligated to be neutral. And what he said he would do is organize debates where the Democrat can come to him, basically, and participate in a debate where he sets the stage and controls all the details. So basically, he doesn't want the debates to be run by the organization that normally runs them. He wants them to be run by somebody he chooses that will favor him in all respects. I don't know about the sports thing, but that wouldn't surprise me. Would not surprise me in the least. Yes, he wants to have the Democrat candidate there for the debates that he organizes. He just wants to make sure the entire format is slanted in his favor, instead of a neutral stance the way it would be if it were organized by the current entity that puts together these debates. You know, either that or I think he said that if they won't come, that he'll just have a rally. You know? But he's trying to say the mountain must come to Muhammad, basically. With this case, him being Muhammad. I mean, he obviously doesn't use Muslim metaphors, but that's what he's saying. He was mad during the last general debates because he had to share an audience with football. That doesn't surprise me. This is a guy who got to be a whiny little bitch when Time gave Greta Thunberg the Person of the Year award instead of him. You know, so instead of being an adult and saying, "Congratulations, kid, good job for spreading awareness of this," he decided to go on a whiny rampage on Twitch. Or not Twitch, Twitter. I hear the toenails of my dog approaching. Hello, Bella. How you doing, puppy? Oh, you're cold. You've just been out in the snow. Okay. Copter, you're never getting near the football. Just don't even try. Never gonna happen. Oh. You know, right about now, there are Republican voters all across this country high-fiving each other as they march steadily toward dictatorship as if they did themselves a favor. You know? And they're like raging about the vote in the House, but they're all saying, "Oh, thank goodness McConnell is going to make sure we don't lose." How wrong is it for me to laugh at your last comment because I'm imagining Trump just being mad at the Muhammad reference? It wouldn't surprise me in the least if he got really mad about it. So you laugh all you want. Oh man. So yeah, it's oof, what a day. What a day. American politics sucks so bad right now. And this is from a guy who's been involved in discussion and reporting and op-editing on the American political world since like 2011. This is the worst I've ever seen it, like ever. And it legitimately scares me. Legitimately scares me. Copter, he's not actually playing football. The football, when it comes to the president, is the suitcase with the nuclear launch commands and such in it. And you are not getting that away from the Secret Service that, carries it for him. Oh, man. See, when I got up today, I really wanted to do a stream about some other, like, social topic. But then the vote happened and everything went to shit. We got the impeachment process started, and now we have the Republicans in the Senate saying it's not going to matter. We're going to make sure there's an acquittal, basically saying they don't care about the rule of law or the facts or evidence or anything. So it's very frustrating, which I think is what makes Republicans happy. They like making Democrats mad. They don't care how much it hurts them. They cut off their noses despite their faces. It's just a very Republican way of doing things. And yet, still, I can't get a Republican to come here and actually try to explain the Republican point of view. It's crazy talk. I don't care about the suitcase. I legitimately want to steal a football from the president. I'm not sure you'll actually find him carrying a football because that would mean he'd have to play an actual sport. I don't think he does that. I think the only handoff in his life is when a woman tells him, "Take your hands off me." Oh, God. Is there anybody else here who thinks it funny watching all the really horrified facial expressions on Melania Trump whenever you see her, like, right behind him? And she's looking at him like he's a walking, talking pig in a suit. I just think that's the funniest thing I've seen on TV in ages. Also, unrelated to the stream, Bella, you're a good puppy. Yes, you are. If you ever meet President Trump, I give you permission to pee on his shoes. You pee on Trump's shoes if you see him. So, yeah. It's funny. My dog appears to be an Elizabeth Warren fan. When she's at the door and she's reluctant to come inside, we usually turn on YouTube on the TV and play a video of like dogs playing and such to get her to come inside. But lately, during the election season, they've been running Warren ads ahead of that video. And for some reason, when my dog hears Elizabeth Warren's voice and sees her on screen, she comes running in to look at the TV. Trophy wife. Though the woman was a former, like, nude model or something. So, yeah, definite trophy wife. Lollipoposaurus, is this where I make a Trump being into pee comment? Well, I mean, there is the rumored video of the Russian hooker peeing in his face. Honestly, I would give real money to see that exposed to the public. I think that would be the best thing in ages. Because it's very tough for anybody to support a president who is like on video getting pissed on in the face by a hooker from a country that hates us. And, I gotta say this. One of the things that blows my mind about the politicians who support Trump so thoroughly is that until Trump, these guys basically worshipped the bones of Ronald Reagan. Like he was somewhere between a saint and a pope and Jesus in the minds of Republicans, And if Reagan were alive today, he would personally visit the White House and shoot Trump in the face. Like, you do not collude with Russia. And it's messed up because, like, 25 years ago, any American candidate who said, yeah, I'm going to take help from Russia, the Republicans would have been, like, on that, like, white on rice. They'd have been so pissed, they would have demanded the guy go to jail, whatever. So they're basically crapping on the memory of Ronald Reagan in order to support Donald Trump. Thank you for knowing that and not just letting me sound like a creeper. No, I mean, Lollipoposaurus, If anybody doesn't know that there is a somewhere floating around out there is a videotape of Trump being pissed in the face by a Russian hooker. They need to know that because it's out there somewhere, and I just am waiting for it to be exposed to the public so we can see the real horrible, disgusting, vile things that this man will do. And, on top of everything else, being stupid enough to do it in a foreign country where you gotta know that the chick is working for the KGB. Like, how dumb do you have to be an American politician of any kind, go to Russia and get a hooker? How dumb do you have to be? Um, that's literally begging for them to make tapes of you to blackmail you. You may as well have sent the Kremlin like a written invitation to blackmail you. Copter sent him to the gulag. Yeah, I think that's like the least offensive thing he's done on tape. Yeah, but as far as things he's done on tape go, that would shake even the confidence his supporters have in him, because it's tough to look like the strong man in front of your supporters when they see a woman pissing in your face on tape. Yeah, Copter, get your shit together as soon as you can, because you may need to have your life organized in order to even survive the wave of Republican dictatorship that's on its way. It's crazy. But yeah, Republicans, one of the reasons they love Trump is because he comes off as a tough guy, a strong man, whatever. But that image is very hard to maintain when you see him doing something so submissive in a week on video. You know? Yeah, I've heard some think of Trump as some macho sex symbol. Who? Who thinks of Trump as a macho sex symbol? An orangutan clan? Like, what? Like, there are, like, animal species that would look at Trump and be disgusted. Like, how could anybody think of him as a sex symbol? I mean, good God. I mean, if his personality were not enough to drive you away, I don't think his physical appearance is going to make the deal. Bella, you need to stop scratching the carpet, honey, or Mom's going to come and get you. Just my luck, I get rid of all my guns and then all hell breaks loose, yeah. Definitely not me. I've always got rapey vibes from him, even back when he was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, here's the thing. I grew up in the greater New York area, so I've known this guy as a scumbag for decades. There's like, everybody in New York hates this guy because he does nothing but act like a total asshole, like, for years and years and years and years. He cheated people that have worked for him out of their money. He ripped people off with his fake college. Like, he has a fake charity. The guy is just a horrible, horrible human being. I have the auto mod set up to be as restrictive as possible, Lollipoposaurus, because I imagine that a Republican coming here might be a little pissed off and start trying to say things that would get the channel in trouble with Twitch. So I have deliberately restricted this stuff, so I have to click allow on a lot of things that might normally pass. But I had a guy show up 2 streams ago when I was reacting to a video trying to drop the N-word several times in a row in various weird ways, trying to beat the auto mod. And he got like 2 attempts out before I caught him and banned him. But, I have to have tight restrictions until I grow big enough to have a full-time mod watching stuff, and right now I'm a one-dude show here. I did hear that men think of him as some macho man to idolize, and women find him sexy for the same reasons. Lollipoposaurus, nobody I ever heard of. He is not macho. He is... I mean, I'm obviously very overweight, but he's obese. He's disgusting. He's old. He has shitty hair. He basically looks like somebody spray painted him with orange while he held like a spoon up over each eye. There is nothing physically attractive about Donald Trump. And no guy I know looks at that and thinks of somebody macho. I've heard Republican guys say they wish Arnold Schwarzenegger would run for president while swinging his Conan sword and stabbing enemies of the state, and that they look at him as macho, but I don't think of any Republican that I've ever met telling me that Trump was macho. Um, and women don't find him sexy for any reason other than his money. I mean, let's be honest here. If he weren't rich, he would be a very lonely dude. Um, Copter says you should give me VIP so Nightbot doesn't mute me. No. You're just a goofball enough that I have to be careful about giving you VIP. Let's see, Lollipoposaurus. I figured it part of the RP stuff or something. I don't know. It's got to be the money, dude. It's got to be the money. Everybody here, type F in chat if you think Trump only gets women because he got money. Let's see those Fs. Oh, God. Yeah, I mean, on top of everything else, I can't... Yeah, there's a lot of F. I can't imagine any woman finding a guy attractive after seeing him on video saying that he would bang his own daughter if they weren't related. I mean, like, bleh. So gross. VIP doesn't give me any power, only makes Nightbot ignore my chat. Nah, you're still gonna be subject to everything. I'm paranoid about anything happening to this channel. I haven't had it that long yet. I don't want to put it, and I don't want to start throwing VIP status out at anybody. Plus, I don't want to be seen as playing favorites with anybody. Oh, God. Let's refresh the Associated Press wire service. The latest, Pelosi throws impeachment into confusion. What now? A sample of the sights and sounds across Washington beyond. So she's refusing to say whether or when she would send the articles of impeachment to the Senate for trial. At a news conference held immediately after the vote, Pelosi said, "We'll see what happens." When asked if she would send the articles to the Senate, she said that House Democrats not name impeachment managers. House prosecutors will make the case in the Senate trial until they know a bit more about how the Senate will conduct the trial. Okay, that's fair. McConnell rejected a proposal to call several witnesses. The GOP-led Senate is expected to acquit Trump. Not surprising. Yeah. I wonder if she could hold on to the articles of impeachment until after the next Senate election and hope that the Senate flips to 50-50 instead of a majority. I don't know how long she's allowed to hold those. Seeing them together makes me feel like I need to call Child Protective Services. Yeah, somebody call Chris Hansen on Donald Trump. Mr. Trump, I heard what you said about your daughter. Have a seat. To catch a trumpeter. Oh, God. I couldn't find anything saying how long she can hold it. I'm sure that that'll be discussed in the news now that she said she's waiting. I'm sure that'll be a subject that's reported on extensively, so don't worry if you can't find it right now. Oh, man. This whole process, man. If the Republicans in Congress had any integrity whatsoever, the guy would already be out of office. You know, there's just no integrity with the Republicans at all. Hang on a second. Wife coming in. Hold on. Mute. Wife has been watching the live broadcast, and the way they're painting it, it looks like she can hold them indefinitely until the managers are named, which she will not have happen until the Senate's rules have been clearly agreed upon and she decides that they are fair. So if she can hold them indefinitely, it would be very interesting to see what happens if she holds them until the election and hope for a change in the makeup of the Congress. Interesting to see. Of course, if she does that, it would run the risk of the House of Representatives flipping to being controlled by the Republicans. So that would be a hell of a gamble. Supposedly, there are lots of Republicans suggesting behind the scenes Trump resign before things come out he can't evade. I haven't seen that personally and honestly can't see anyone actually saying that directly to him because he'd flip his wig. Yes, and probably fire whoever it was who dared suggest it. We were saying earlier, he will probably do everything in his power to not just get a second term, but to remain in office for his entire life, if it means trying to change the term limit laws or declaring himself dictator or whatever, because the Justice Department made it clear that the only reason he's not being criminally charged under the collusion stuff from several months ago is that he's the sitting president, and as soon as he is no longer protected by the office of the presidency, that he's going to get charged. So this is a guy who's currently the president of the United States, who knows that the minute he leaves office, he will literally be on trial and probably in prison for the rest of his natural life.
Good place for him.
Who knows? Who knows? The thing is, the Republican Party can't afford to get rid of Trump. It's catch-22 for them. They're kind of fucked either way. Because if they keep him, they're going to go down with the ship if that ever happens when, his travesties finally catch up with him. And if they do get rid of him, then the Republican voter base that loves him is going to be all pissed at them, and as long as they have him, they have what amounts to a rubber stamp in the White House, which they like. And as long as they have him, they know that they'll be able to keep packing the Supreme Court every time a justice dies or retires. So, they're kind of screwed. I forget who it was who said this, but I heard it on the radio where somebody said that the legacy of Donald Trump is going to be horrible, that no matter what he does now, that once he is out of office and, has no power to punish anymore, that all the people he's pissed off are going to come crawling out of the woodwork to write tell-all books and memoirs and go on talk show tours, and, that he is so fucked the minute he gets out of office. And I have to imagine that's correct, because he has shit on so many of his own allies that there's just no way that once he loses the ability to punish them, that they are not going to get horrible revenge. Wouldn't it be fucked up if he actually left the presidency and defected to Russia to escape the charges coming at him from the American government? Yeah, except that Mitch McConnell, when somebody said to him, well, what happens if Donald Trump has to nominate somebody, or if a seat becomes available for the Supreme Court in the last year of Trump's presidency, and McConnell, without batting an eyelash, said, we'll fill it. So, he obviously stole that nomination. Mitch McConnell is arguably more dangerous to the well-being of the United States than Trump. I keep hoping that, McConnell will go on a swimming expedition to get eaten by a shark or something. Have his head cut off by a snapping turtle. Something, preposterous and, awful and ridiculous and laughable at the same time that would befit a man of his awful stature. Let's see. I think it'll be interesting to hear what Lev has to say since he wants to cooperate. Honestly, I don't think we're going to hear anything from anybody that's going to really compromise Trump that hasn't already been said during the investigation. Because I think that, the Trump people are making it clear to anybody who could really damage him that it will not be tolerated. Beat up by his neighbor while mowing the grass. Who knows? Run over by his own lawnmower. I don't know, Something. I would love it if it involved a giant tortoise, though. Oh, God. No, I believe you. I don't have a news article about it, but that sounds pretty, like, possible. Sounds frighteningly plausible that that could happen. And amusing on top of everything else. Simba, what are you posting here? What's the image before I allow that to stick? Rand Paul, oh God. Ron Paul and his son are a couple of crackpots. Ron Paul is a medical doctor who doesn't believe in evolution, which is friggin' idiotic because evolution is the foundation of everything about modern biology. Like, how can you be a physician and not get that? And Rand Paul is just as much of a quack. Yeah, if Simba in Florida doesn't tell me what the picture is, I'm not going to bring that up on stream without knowing what it is. You know? And I wonder, maybe I can go to this and then check out the picture. Hold on. Yeah, no, we're not putting that up on stream, dude. I mean, there are better memes you could have for that. Um, just saying, you know, there are better ways of handling that one. I'm not mad. I'm just saying that's something that would not be appropriate to put on the stream at this point. Yeah. So Rand Paul's another quack. I'm not really a big fan of them. But you know, if you want to, I could do a whole show about misconduct on the part of law enforcement because there's been plenty of that over the past couple of years. Um, you know, including but not limited to killing people that should not have even been treated with violence. But there are ways you can approach that are, you know, show a bit of sensitivity to the subject. You know what I'm saying? Um, every time I see a picture of Trump in front of a seal, I have to check that it doesn't say something crazy. Not that that has ever happened, like all the time. Yeah, um, I I can only imagine the incredible volume of mocking memes that have been made about Trump. What's funny is even in that blurred image, you can see that the makeup and a spray tan around his eyes is still not enough to make them match the rest of his face. Like even in that blurred image, his eyes are like lighter colored than the rest of his skin. I mean, how stuck in narcissism do you have to be to not realize that that orange color you paint yourself with makes you look like an idiot, you know? Like you have to be so convinced that everything you're doing is perfect that it just boggles the imagination to not recognize how bad that makes a human being look. By the way, if you haven't followed yet, I could definitely use some follows because I think that the 50 follower metric is the last hurdle before this channel can get affiliate status. So I would really love to hit that. So if you haven't followed yet, please do. I would much appreciate it. Mucho appreciate it. Tell your friends to come here and we can all laugh at the president together. Along with other goofy stuff. Oh, so you guys may remember I did one of my first streams was when I had a trans woman who was a retired U.S. Navy Medical Corps member to discuss transgender issues and transgender rights and the medical realities of being trans, whatever. And I exported that from Twitch over to YouTube, and the first person to comment on it was some bigot. So, you know, if you feel like you want to go over there and give that person some hell, you know, please do. I have very low tolerance for bigotry. He is a Cheeto. Yes, everybody knows that he is a Cheeto. And not even the good kind, because like you wouldn't want him for a snack. He's like an old, dusty, stale Cheeto that like got hair stuck to the top of it off the floor, like old hair. A buddy of mine basically committed self-yeet by cop. Do I even want to know this story? or will it make me all sad? I think it's just a product of being surrounded by yes men his whole life. No one has ever been like, dude, that tan makes you look like a superhero who just got back from the beach. Oh, man. Honest to God, the eye coloring on this avatar looks more natural than the stuff on his face. Oh, man. That's crazy. But, I mean, yeah, you can obviously tell from that discoloring that he gets that tan sprayed on while wearing some of those eye goggles to keep it off of his eyes. And then, applies a little extra to cover up the strap marks or whatever on the little eye guards. But it's so bad. Mr. Trump, if you're listening to this, I may disagree with you about a lot. I might think you're a complete clown and an idiot and whatever other arguments, but for God's sake, don't make yourself look any dumber than you have to. Like, stop with the fucking spray tan or whatever the hell it is that you're using to color your whole head orange. But yeah, I imagine he's been surrounded by yes men his whole life. That would not surprise me. What's amazing to me is if you grew up in the New York area like I did, and you've known about, I was born in 1971, and so I've been around for his antics for years and years and years and years, and he is so fucking universally hated in New York, like it's unbelievable. The only reason anybody in this country supports him is because they didn't have to live with the guy. Like they didn't have him in their area. This is not an impeachment celebration. And welcome, young. Am I saying this right? Young Jastro. I don't know. It's not an impeachment celebration. It is, among other things, it's a discussion of it and the implications that might be had if the Senate acquits versus convicts and that kind of thing. I don't think that there's anything to celebrate about the impeachment. I think that it needed to happen, but I think it's a tragedy that we're in a circumstance where this kind of thing even needs to be on the table. So no, this is not a celebration. I mean, I'm all for mocking the guy for looking orange and stuff, but the circumstance in which we have a sitting president that has caused such an uproar that this kind of circumstance has arisen is not a cause for celebration. Lollipoposaurus, do you think he does the whole body or just the non-eyes? I don't know. And I'm not going to lie, I never want to see President Trump with so little clothing on that I'll tell how far down his body that coloring goes. Like I have no interest whatsoever in seeing the guy in a Speedo just to test out how far that has gone down his body. That's why we need the video. Yeah, I honestly, I want the video to go public, but I don't want to actually have my eyes laid on it, because I'm sure it would be burned into my brain permanently. I need a Trump mask and a suit, and that football will be mine, and then off to North Korea to collect my airplane. Geez, I promise I can type usually. I have the same problem. Like, when I was younger, I used to do 110 words a minute. Now, on a good day, I'm down to 80, and a lot of the time, my fingers just need their knuckles cracked, and I just typo everything in sight, and it's a travesty of bad typing. But anyway, Young, does that answer your question? This is not a celebration stream about the impeachment. We do goof on the president a bit because, mostly the people here are Democrat-leaning, at least, and we're not big fans of Trump, but we're not celebrating this. I don't even know if you're still here, Young Jastro, but just wanted to see if that was, clear enough answer to your question. I try not to ignore anybody in the chat. I try to give everybody a chance to talk and voice their stuff here. I mean, unless you obviously turn out to be a troll and a mean-spirited person and just, here to cause a ruckus. You're on your own side. Look out for number one, huh? Well, I guess there's worse things you could do. Oh, man. Now, I think it's interesting. I didn't know there was such a thing as a impeachment celebration going on. Is that like a thing? Is that happening? Like, are there other streams in Just Chatting or in politics where, they're all sitting around and high-fiving and popping beers and, like, jumping up and down with pom-poms and otherwise cheering about this. Trump is not real. Oh, he's very real. He's very real. Yeah, I didn't even know that there was like impeachment celebration. I don't even know if that's a thing. Is it, somebody like tell me? Is that actually a thing that's going on? Yeah. They brought up the nude pics during the vote debate. I'd pretty much look at anyone. Shut up, I'm curious, but don't think I want to see him get all jiggly. Okay, now I got that stupid Jigglypuff song stuck in my head, so thanks for that. Jigglypuff, Jigglypuff. Oh, Simba. The penalty for using the phrase fake news here is you get one warning and then you get a timeout. We're not going with that. If you think something is fake news, provide a rebuttal. Don't just vomit the phrase fake news into the stream. That's just silly. This is the stream I plan to stream the football and trade it for a 1940s Russian biplane. For those who are not in the know, Copter plays a game called War Thunder, which is about tanks and planes and such, and he's just kind of riffing on that with this.
Silly copter.
Yeah. My wife just came in and said, silly Copter. Oh, God. You guys are treading the line. I'm going to let you slide on that, but be careful with using that phrase. I'm not a fan. You're saying Trump is not real. I think he should be impeached. Well, he was impeached. Now the question is what's going to happen in the trial in the front of the Senate. And the likely outcome is an acquittal from the Senate because the Senate is controlled by the Republican Party at this point. And the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, has already said he has no intention of allowing a conviction to happen. And people like Lindsey Graham already said he has no intention of acting as an impartial juror in that trial. So the senators on the Republican side have proven they have no intention of following the law, following proper procedure, following the evidence, or doing anything other than being a bunch of partisan obstructionists, basically, in order to preserve Trump's presidency. So the likely outcome is that he is impeached but not convicted, and that he will become the de facto dictator of the United States, because that will be proof positive that he can do anything and that no charge will stick to him, so there will no longer be any reason for him to show any kind of restraint or follow any laws. For failing to live up to the campaign promises you voted for. So I've been hoping, am I saying that right? Young Jastro? Is that the right way to say it? I don't want to mess up your name. But I've been hoping a Republican person would show up, because I'm really hoping somebody will explain how it is that it's still acceptable for them to feel they can support President Trump in any way after all the things that he has done that are obviously criminal, obviously unethical, obviously jeopardizing the security of the United States, the way that he has treated people, the way he's insulted the disabled, the way he mistreats women. Like, how is it that after all of that, like, what is the logic that lets a Republican continue to support the guy? Like, explain how that works? Okay, thank you, Young Jestro. I'm trying to say it right, because I have a last name in real life that people mess up, so I try really hard not to do that to other people. Bipartisanship is dead. America is in full power grab mode. I'm going to agree with you to an extent about the power grab thing, but I have to say it seems to me to be coming more from Republican politicians than from the left. The left has just demonstrated that he has people who can disagree with it so hard they'll actually switch parties. So I think the power grab thing seems mostly to come from the political right. Let's see. Which promises don't disagree with you? Just seems like most outspoken Trump voters lead with he's doing all the things he promised. I have to say, I've heard the same thing that Lollipoposaurus is talking about, where a lot of Republican voters are still really on board and they say he's doing a great job and he's living up to his promises and whatever else. Okay, go get that coffee, and you and Copter can talk about the finer points of real coffee. I drink the fast stuff that you get from Dunkin' Donuts or the instant crystals, but if you have better tasting coffee, you and Copter might have something to talk about. Pretty much everything you said, it's memes. I hear about policy. He failed to build a wall. Immigration is higher than ever. So let me try to unpack some of the stuff you're talking about here. So by what you're saying, I get the impression that you're in favor of the border wall. Am I correct in that? Young Jastro, you're on board with the border wall idea? Because that's something I've struggled a lot with. And as far as immigration goes, we were just talking about some weird immigration problems earlier. I don't know if you were here and lurking for that, but there's been an uptick in a very unusual form of birth tourism that you might find interesting. Let's see. Instant coffee is an insult to coffee. Instant coffee is fast and easy to make, though, so it's got that going for it, Copter. So while young Jastro is formulating an answer, let me just reiterate what we were talking about earlier about birth tourism. Apparently, one of the weird ways that immigration, or one aspect of immigration that has risen, I don't have stats on whether it's up across the board or not, but one way in which it's risen is birther tourism, which is when pregnant women come to the United States to give birth here so their kids will have citizenship, and then when they go home, they gain the benefits of American citizenship even if they're not here. But that is becoming a booming business among the super rich. Foreign politicians, foreign doctors, foreign business people coming to the United States, particularly from Asia, and this one Asian woman got arrested after making millions and millions of dollars arranging this for people. And one of the ways that she got these people into the United States and got the border people to ignore them, like she would coach these people on how to beat the border checks. And one of the ways you do that is by telling them you're here on vacation and then you're going to stay at a Trump property, and that increases your chances of getting in enormously. So Trump's policies have literally led to an increase in that kind of illegal activity, and his own properties are an excuse people use that gets them past the border. It's bizarre. And darkly humorous, actually, that Trump himself has provided one of their keys to entry by, his name being used. So, young Jastro, one of the challenges with the idea of a border wall, and we're going to put aside for the moment whether or not immigration is a good thing or a bad thing, and we're just going to assume that there's a reason to try to impede it. All right, that if your choice for how to impede that is a border wall, that carries with it some serious problems as a tool for enforcing that idea, enforcing a reduction in immigration. The first one of which, I used to joke that if you build a 30-foot high wall along the southern border of the United States, that will make me a millionaire, because then I will go down to Mexico and I will open a factory that builds 31-foot tall ladders. Right? The only case in modern times where a wall has been at all effective was around East Berlin during the terrible days of the Red Scare, which I don't know how old you are, but I'm old enough that I was alive before the Berlin Wall fell, and I actually had college friends that were there chiseling away at the thing when it came down. But the only reason that was effective was because it was on a very limited scale where it was easy to monitor the entire thing all the time, 24 hours a day. Whereas a border wall along the southern area of the United States would take about 2,000 miles, as opposed to and you can look this up on Wikipedia. There's tons of information about it, as opposed to a very few, like maybe 3 or 4 linear miles to cover. And one of the problems that the German economy had, the East German economy anyway, is that it was punishingly expensive to keep a wall up even around that one city. Okay? The cost of building a wall of the scope you're talking about is virtually impossible to make happen, because in addition to the actual construction, right, you also have materials, transportation, the cost of paying people to do it, and then an ongoing upkeep cost that is absolutely ruinous. So if your goal is to do something to affect the immigration numbers, a wall that will be financially devastating to the well-being of the United States economy, and which can be defeated with nothing more than a ladder or a shovel to go underneath it. And people will. I mean, there are already tunnels under barricaded areas of the border now. People will defeat the wall. There's a reason why we stopped building castles with moats, and why the Maginot Line in World War II was the last time anybody tried a static fortified defense like that. It's because it doesn't work. Okay? So Trump promised a wall. It hasn't happened. Trump promised that Mexico would pay for it. They're not going to. They never will. And on top of everything else, it simply wouldn't do the job that you're hoping it would do. So I'm not really sure that that's a viable direction, and that, again, that's assuming that it's actually a good idea to halt all immigration. Because you have to keep in mind, this country is a nation that was built by immigrants. And if you read your history, you'll find out that every generation of immigrants, there tends to be, like, there was a time when the Irish were the massive influx of immigrants. There was a time when Asians were the massive influx of immigrants. Every time this kind of thing happens, the people who are here in the United States freak out and say, stop the immigration. And then a few years later, those people integrate into society, and the country is better for it. And then the next wave comes 30, 40 years later, and then the same objections are raised, and people freak out and say, stop the horrible immigrants, and then they integrate eventually, and the process starts anew. So I'm not sure it's actually a good idea to halt all immigration, but I am sure that if that's a goal you even want to pursue, that a ruinously expensive wall that will not actually accomplish that task is probably a bad way to try to go about it. Let me try and get caught up on chat. We talked about coffee. Instant coffee's an insult. Border wall is good. 30 feet, full concrete. Shut it down. I'm not sure what you're saying, shut it down. I lost track of where that meshed with the conversation. But yeah, so I just think it's funny that a lot of people are saying immigration's a problem. I'm not really sure why people say immigration is a problem, though. So as somebody who is on the wall side of things here, maybe you can tell me, what is it about immigration that you feel makes it something that needs to be stopped? What is that? What is it about immigration that you find objectionable? Young Jastro, that's totally fine. I just hope that you're able to play whatever game you're in without, like, getting your character killed or whatever by paying attention to the conversation, because we're mostly gamers here too. So I feel your pain on that one. Clearly, the solution to the world's problems is a fully AI controlled squid launcher on every street. Oh, Copter. It's actually not laughable. Again, the border you're talking about in Israel is not a 2,000-mile long wall, and it does not have the same volume of people with the same available options that we do. Mexico is a hugely populous country that has people that have had literally decades of experience getting through the border against any obstacle, including places where there are fences and walls and concrete and barriers. They go over, under, or through the barrier. A barrier is not your most effective way of stopping people from getting here. Money isn't okay. The thing is, money is a man-created construct to allow the trading of goods and services for agreed-upon value, but that doesn't mean there's not an actual economy that will be hurt or helped by any large influence on it. And so, yes, the cost does matter. Um, and when you say it works for the bankers, the actual truth is it does not work for the bankers. I actually should do a show on banking and economics because this is one of my areas of expertise. But it's not going to be a non-affecting item if you try to build a wall. It's going to cost a ton. The wall stops illegal immigration, those walking across. Again, we have barriers in place already. People already tunnel under them. They climb over them. They cut through them. Physical barriers are not an effective way to put an end to immigration. But going back to the other, you finish raiding in 9 minutes. Are you playing World of Warcraft or something? But again, it's still looking for an explanation on what it is about immigration you find objectionable. We do have plenty of guards and plenty of guns. There are not enough guards and guns to man a 2,000-mile-long wall 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year without it being ruinously expensive. I don't think physical barriers are the best answer, says Lollipoposaurus, even if I did want to stop immigration, which I do not. I think a wall would just stop poor people from coming. There are plenty of other ways to get here illegally. Interesting point. Would you support something like helping make other places better so people would not want to come here so much? Lollipoposaurus, I'm going to guess, this is just a prediction, so if I'm wrong, young Jastro, tell me. But most people I have encountered who are in favor of the wall do not want to help anywhere else either. They just want to keep everybody out. And I'm still trying to figure out why they say that. Let's see. Don't mention guns unless you want me to go on a rant. You can rant about whatever you want. Just don't break TOS when you do it. Jake Versus, welcome. I always thought that more health and welfare programs to benefit Americans. Maybe it's a stupid opinion. I'm not sure the context you're talking about, but I have no objection to doing things that benefit the average American citizen. Copter, you man them, use automatic squid launchers. Yes, the squid are the wave of the future. Lollipoposaurus, being xenophobic is not the same as simply wanting to stop immigration. That's true, but I have seen a lot of cross-pollination between people who are xenophobic and people who want to stop immigration. Young Jestro, we should end foreign aid in general, but if we have to pay off countries to stop immigration, we can. We've already done this under Trump with payments to El Salvador. So, Young Jestro, I'm still waiting for you to answer the question of why you think immigration should be stopped. And yes, Lollipoposaurus, we absolutely could find uses for squid launchers. The state's National Guard is paid through government, and it's a standard pay grade throughout the military, so it could be an effective guard. You have to keep in mind the National Guard people serve as reservists. They are not on full-time active duty in numbers sufficient to man a 2,000-mile-long wall. Uranium-infused squids. Young Jastro, the type of immigration we get now, Hispanic, South American, African, is fundamentally different from the melting pot America you referenced earlier, which was broadly European immigration. So first, I don't think that's true. I think that considering the number of slaves that were brought here, starting with Columbus's Haitian slave trade and expanding to the African continental slave trade, brought in a lot of people who were not European in any way, shape, or form. And they are a perfectly valid part of American society. And secondly, I'm not sure that there's anything wrong with Hispanic or South American or African immigrants. I don't see why you single them out as being not people to let in. It matters who you are and where you come from. Again, why? Check out the 1965 Hart-Celler Act. If you can provide a link, we might look at it. Just nothing that'll break terms of service, please. Lollipoposaurus, I don't know. Young Drestro, you just might have wanted to halt immigration for economic reasons. In that case, you might want to help do things to help people in their homelands as opposed to not wanting to have immigration in the U.S. It could happen. He already said he wants to stop all foreign aid to everywhere else, so he's not on board with improving any other country. It's both economic and cultural. Again, why? Humans aren't interchangeable. Again, why? Because you're starting to lean towards sounding sort of bigoted there, and I don't want to accuse you of that, but you're definitely sort of steering in that direction. So I'm hoping you will give a reasoning behind what you're saying that doesn't amount to, something as unpleasant as xenophobic racism. Copter, I actually have a blueprint I made for a squid launcher I drew up at work one night. I actually believe you might actually have tried to sketch out a squid launcher. I could believe you might try that, Copter. I guess basically for young Jestro, if your reason for saying you want immigration to stop is one based on racism, I can't really agree with that as an acceptable reason to change how we handle immigration. I don't believe racism is acceptable under any circumstances. So if that's your rationale for this stuff, then we have a fundamental difference of opinion on what constitutes an acceptable reason for affecting the way human beings are treated. I have sleepless nights at work. I got bored. Squid launcher was a result. Well, you do have a high-stress job where sleep can be hard to come by. Do you agree with the pulling of troops last month? Who are you asking, Jake? Me or one of the other chatters here? And which troop change are you talking about in particular? Because if you're asking me, you'll need to provide some kind of citation because I'm not on top of where troops are or are not being deployed in the last 30 days. So if you can provide a link to some information about that, preferably something from a reputable source, not, I'm extremely biased.org or something would not be okay. Again, take a minute and look it up and find some hard reporting on it, and we can take a look. One of the things I like about doing this stream is that a lot of the time the viewers bring up interesting topics for us to discuss that are of direct interest to them. So I'm always open to hearing about new ideas for stuff we could delve into. Copter, I don't know what'll be the death of me first, my ex-girlfriend or stress. Stress hasn't stabbed you with a paring knife. Your ex-girlfriend has, so you might want to keep that in mind. I know, you said it was an accident, but still, stress has not actually stabbed you with a knife. Okay, give me a minute to take a look at this. U.S. is pulling troops out of Syria and Afghanistan, but the tonnage of airdropped supplies is spiking. Join our troops. Syria, supplies. Okay, so this is the first article I've seen about it, so I can't claim to have enough information to form a really informed opinion yet. But I can say this generally, right? Generally, I am in favor of not deploying U.S. troops anywhere that we are not seeing troops massed to attack us. I believe that supporting the troops, for me, first and foremost, means not putting them into harm's way for reasons that don't actually protect America. I don't want to see any service person dead or maimed or psychologically damaged for reasons that do not involve stopping an invasion of the United States. So on that basis, I am generally in favor of bringing troops home, but there are always circumstances in which there are other factors at play, and I haven't had enough time to adequately research this to form a real opinion on it. But if there is no other factor involved in this, I'm generally in favor of bringing troops home. I want our service people alive. I want them well. I want them healthy and safe. And the easiest way to do that is to not send them anywhere dangerous unless it's genuinely warranted. So, that's the only answer I can really give you until I've had more time to read this, because while I'm live, I can't really go into massive, deep research on it. But I will read that article and hopefully have a more informed opinion, because this is the first I'm really reading anything about the Syria troop withdrawal that's mentioned in that article. I do think it's interesting that there's a lot of supplies being dropped in the area. I'm not averse to the idea of dropping food on the hungry, So I don't see that as a particular problem. I'm curious to know what your opinion is on it. And young Jastro, still waiting for you to explain what makes you think that immigration is a bad thing, or why those specific groups of people should be kept out of the country. And again, really hoping your reason is something not racist. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here. Okay, good. So we'll look forward to seeing your answer to that question. Copter, being stabbed never hurt anyone. Okay, if you say so, man. So, Lollipop, welcome back. We have two topics on the table at the moment. One is the Military Times article and the troop pullout that it is associated with, which I have said I don't have enough information to form a really well-defined opinion on yet, but I will look into it. But generally speaking, I'm in favor of protecting our troops by keeping them out of harm's way until it's absolutely necessary. And I am always okay with providing food aid to hungry people. Yes. So, Lollipoposaurus, feel free to voice an opinion on that if you are well informed on it. Young Jestro, you said earlier that people are interchangeable. No, I did not say that. You said people are not interchangeable. So you see no problems with immigration no matter the source. What I said was I don't see a particular reason to single out certain groups the way you were talking about, because you specifically said what amounted to European and white okay, other people not so much. And that seems, like I said, xenophobically racist. I'm trying to give you an opportunity to clarify that. But you specifically were talking about excluding Africans, who we do have a ton of African descent people in this country. Let's see. I do not agree. I think it does matter. It's fundamentally different if you take in people from one country or another. Again, nobody's saying that people are interchangeable. Nobody's saying that people are all the same everywhere. Nobody says everybody speaks the same languages or has the same culture in their country of origin. Immigration is a policy. All immigration is a choice. That seems correct. I don't see why that means you think some people should be excluded based on race or country of origin. So you must determine which countries, which groups will be allowed access. Okay. But when you talked about the groups you think should be allowed versus the ones that you don't, you were basically giving very racist reasons for it. You were saying basically white European good, everybody else bad. And that seems like a really not okay way of separating people out. Jake Verse. For me, I'm in Army, and I've seen it's my duty to protect the civilians of the country I'll be in. So leaving Syria to me with ISIS leaders in the AO, which I am taking to mean area of operations, and detained wasn't a good move at all. However, you have to respect the chain of command, so it's kind of hard to voice my opinion on it. No, you're always allowed to voice your opinion here. I do believe that it can be helpful for the United States to assist other countries that are in difficult situations. For the same reason that I think it was morally justified for us to enter World War II. But I do think there have been situations where the U.S. military's use was probably not warranted. And we were saying earlier, a military isn't a good or bad thing. It's an instrument of violence used to enforce political policy. So what determines whether or not a military is moral or not is the decisions of the people who decide when to put it to use and for what reason. The military and the people in it are by nature there to follow orders and do what they're told, and use their abilities to enforce political will through what amounts to violence and mayhem and destruction. So I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that that violence and destruction only happens for the most moral reasons we have available. It's very consequential that most of our immigration is from South America. It is different in scale, scope, and character as compared to earlier phases. Okay, scale, scope, and character. Scale and scope, meaning number of people, I'm assuming. But talk to me about character, because character is where you start to sound racist. I'm happy to discuss from whatever angle you all like, but off the top, I think it's bad policy, even if it's done with the best intentions. Not sure it was, since Trump seems to have a questionable relationship with the ruler of Turkey and Russia. But aside from that, it just abandoned our military allies, which isn't good for the next time we need help from someone. And that is an important point, Lollipoposaurus. One of the objections I have had to the ways that Trump has acted as president is he seems to have no real understanding of how one treats an ally and how one resists the activities of an enemy. He seems to basically have it backwards. He's been in bed with our enemies and pushed away our allies, and that seems like a bad long-term plan. Consider Jorge Ramos' statement at the opening of the Democratic primary debate. "We live here, we're not going away, this is our country too." He said this in Spanish. So what if he said it in Spanish? There is no national language of the United States. There are people here from all over the world. There are people here who speak French. There are people here whose primary language is Chinese. I don't think it's in any way a negative thing for him to have been able to address people in Spanish. And I think it is actually a very important statement to Americans in general that of all the modern industrial nations on the planet, we are essentially the only one that doesn't care enough about the fact that we're part of a global community to make sure that we're all at least bilingual. So, I don't think the Spanish thing is a negative at all. Increasingly, we're seeing our Democratic debates contain significant pandering to Hispanics and Spanish leaders. So what? Debates always contain pandering to different demographics that the candidates want to appeal to. That's nothing new. The fact that you're used to seeing it mainly happen to white English-speaking people does not mean that other groups don't deserve to have some attention paid to them. The reason this has happened is because we've had a major immigration flux from South America and Mexico in particular. Again, so what? I'm still waiting for you to explain why you think that's a bad thing. You talk about the character of it, but you seem unwilling to specify what the characteristics are that you're objecting to. You're not following why I say this is racist. I'm saying it's racist because you seem to be objecting to people specifically on racist grounds, like the color of their skin or their country of origin. Young Jastro, you throw out this word, doesn't make much sense to me. Racism, bigotry, whatever. It's when you treat people prejudicially based on things like the color of their skin, their nation of origin, the language they speak, whatever, that have nothing to do with how good of or bad of a person they are. They're cosmetic things that don't really have anything to do with whether or not they're worthwhile human beings. Jake Verse, I lost a couple cousins to the Afghan war. This was an oil war. Most of the wars are for monetary gain nowadays, so it surprised me that he had pulled us out. Yeah, like I said earlier, I think the best way, when people say I support the troops, I think the best way you can do that is to protect them by not sending them into harm's way for reasons like oil wars and such. For the profit of big corporations. I don't think that's a good reason to risk the lives of anybody who's volunteered to serve in uniform. Lollipoposaurus, most is from South America right now, though I feel like other nations are also in the boat. But going by what you said, we're getting high numbers from South America because there are major issues in those areas. When there was famine in Ireland, we got lots of Irish immigrants. When there was a Nazi invasion, we got more Germans and Jews. It's just there this point in time. Are there groups you would allow? That's a good question, young Jestro. Who do you think are the immigrants who should be allowed into the United States? No, I define racism as making a decision where you are prejudiced against people based on inconsequential things like skin color or nation of origin or religion they practice, or other harmless and meaningless distinctions. Like somebody being from El Salvador coming to the United States, unless you can tell me a reason why an El Salvadoran should not be allowed into the United States, discriminating against them simply because they are from El Salvador is racist. You need a better reason than they're from this country. You would need to have a reason why being from that country made them a bad candidate for immigration. Total immigration moratorium. Okay, that is a horrible idea. Um, you cannot be an isolationist country without turning into someplace like North Korea, which I would like to think you are wise enough to understand would be a bad idea. Isolationism is not a useful strategy. I think that things like religion are inconsequential unless you can provide a reason why they are consequential. Would we see different results if we brought in 1 million Jews or 1 million Muslims? Would it be different at all? Well, first of all, you would have a hard time finding 1 million Jews in one block to move into the United States. There are just not that many of them globally that it would be easy to find 1 million to come here. But 1 million Muslims, I don't know. So just so you know, I'm an atheist and I'm not a fan of religious belief in general. I think that there's no evidence to support it. But if that is the sole reason you would or would not deny somebody, I would like to think you have some reason for it, because you seem to be leaning toward the idea of saying Muslims bad, Jews okay. So again, you would need to provide some kind of reason for it. Because what you're basically saying is you're throwing out racist reasons and then kind of throwing an elbow going, as if there's some kind of self-evident reason why somebody from South America or a Muslim or whatever should not be allowed into the United States. And you're not providing that information. You're just saying they shouldn't be allowed, but you're not providing a reason why. And that's where I'm trying to get you to, be more transparent and explain. Sure, on the religion front, they have different cultures. I prefer some cultures to others. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. By definition, saying when it comes to religion you prefer some cultures to others is by definition a bigoted stance. Because you are saying, again, you prefer some cultures to others. You are not explaining what it is about these cultures that you find objectionable. You need to give the why, not just the what, in order to have a stance that seems anything other than surface level racist. All birthright citizenship from 1965 should be revoked. Okay, you're starting to sound like you should be wearing a brown shirt right about now. That's again, you would need to provide a reason why birthright citizenship should be revoked. Not just your personal opinion. Joe Slime, I am actually atheist. Atheist and agnostic are not mutually exclusive terms. Atheism is lacking a belief in God. It deals with whether or not you believe. An agnostic is whether or not you know. Okay? So I am what's called an agnostic atheist. It means I do not believe there is a God, but I cannot say for absolute certainty that no God exists. My claim is that there is insufficient evidence out there for the existence of any God to believe in one. It doesn't mean that I say there's absolutely no possibility of any God whatsoever, ever. It just means that of the ones that I have heard of, there has not been sufficient evidence presented to warrant belief in them. Young Jastro, why wouldn't... Whoops, the chat's scrolling here. Why wouldn't I want to be around Jews instead of Muslims since I'm Jewish? You tell me. It's not my job to tell you why you should or shouldn't want to be around, different people of different faiths. That's your job to tell me. Jake Everses, or Jake Versus. I think America has huge problems of its own as late. Maybe Trump's trying to tackle those, but it's just an assumption. However, you may disagree with this one. I don't think Trump's racist. His campaign and so far his term has been America's first. So my personal opinion has been he's always focused on America first and the betterment of American people's lives. As somebody who grew up around where Trump lived, I can promise you he's absolutely racist. He's been bigoted against people of color for his entire adult life. His entire real estate career started with denying anybody who did not have white skin from being allowed to rent at any of his properties. So there is no question that Trump is a racist. He's been demonstrating that publicly for decades. Again, you don't just get to say that you're not a bigot when you're demonstrating bigoted ideas and not backing them up with reasons. You know, you need to have some kind of non-bigoted reason for these things you're saying in order for them to have that tinge of bigotry sort of cast off. Birthright citizenship is a poor choice to determine your populace. As you say, birth tourism is a current problem. It is enabled by our ridiculous birthright citizenship magic soil policy. And again, young Jestro, a lot of this stuff seems to be rooted in your desire to turn the United States into an isolationist, shithole, for lack of a better term. Which would destroy the country. No country who does this ever prospers. It is not a good idea. It is blatantly harmful to the public. You're not going to get any traction with that here. You need a better reason for saying these things. You also need to explain why you think people of certain countries should not be allowed here because they're from South America or black, because that is blazingly racist. Joe Slime 81, also welcome. From my understanding, that's agnostic. No. Atheism is whether or not you believe in a god. Agnosticism is whether or not you claim to know something for certain or not. I know it's a subtle difference, but it's a very important one. Believe me, as an atheist, I get asked that a lot. You're challenging the very idea that there are any differences between these groups of people. No, I am challenging your statement that there is some difference between us and them that is so objectionable that they should be barred from immigrating here. Young Jester, I tell you there are both tangible and intangible differences, and it's on the basis of those differences that I make my choice, and yet you still fail to demonstrate what those differences are. If I wanted to live around Jews or Christians, I'd live in America. I don't know where you live, so that doesn't really carry much impact here. You're some kind of interventionist. You in favor of the Syrian wars? If you have been listening for the past few minutes, you would have heard me say that I am not in favor of the United States sending its troops into harm's way for any reason that does not have something to do with protecting our nation from being invaded. So you should probably pay attention to what is being said here, because that question's been asked and answered probably 5 times in the last half hour. I've told you already, though the cultures are different. Again, you are not explaining why you think the cultures are different. You're not explaining what differences you find objectionable. We get to choose what kind of culture we want here in America. Demographics are destiny. That is about the most hypocritical thing any American can possibly say, because the Europeans came to this country and they absolutely devastated the already existing population, who, I promise you, if given the choice, would have gladly said they would like to keep their own culture intact and not die by 99% to smallpox. So you should probably rethink that statement if you're going to even remotely hope to not get laughed out of here, because the entire history of the United States is one of destroying other people's cultures, not choosing their own, but literally denying other people the ability to choose their own culture. Let's see. Jake versus, I think you can be pro-America without being racist. I agree with Lollipoposaurus on that. Not sure if I agree about Trump. Plenty of things he's done make me feel like he's racist, etc. To me, being pro-America is wanting the best for all Americans. I agree with that idea. Natural immigrants, everyone. Not doing things that are disproportionately going to harm certain groups. Joe Slime, cool, I learned something new. I was led to believe that atheists didn't believe and could prove there is no God, while agnostics didn't believe but could not prove it. So, nobody can prove there is no such thing as any God anywhere. Here's another very subtle but important distinction. Certain gods can be disproven because the claims that are made about them, their defining characteristics, can be shown to be impossible. Okay? But it is not possible to prove that there could not be any God of any kind at any time, anywhere. Like that, you can't prove that a God is totally impossible. What you can do is when somebody says they believe in God, you can ask them, please provide a definition of what your God is. And if that God, the definition they provide is impossible, then that God is self disproving. The belief in it is self disproving. One of the quintessential examples of that is, and this, by the way, is why the Catholic Church no longer makes this claim, is claiming a God is all powerful. Okay? The current thinking among the Catholic Church is to say that their God is maximally powerful, meaning as powerful as a being can get, because the idea of an all powerful God immediately begs questions like, can your God create a rock so heavy he can't lift it? Okay? Because if he can create a rock so heavy he can't lift it, he is not all powerful when it comes to lifting. But if he can create one so powerful he can't lift it, then he is, or if he can't, then he's not all powerful when it comes to creation. So, based on what people say their gods are defined as, you can disprove that certain gods, as defined by certain people, cannot exist. But you cannot ever prove that there is no possible God of any kind out there. And anybody who says they can disprove all possible gods is simply incorrect. My claim is simply that there is no God I've ever been told about where there is sufficient evidence to warrant believing in it. Be careful using we. Not everyone is in agreement on that stance. That's an important thing to say. Young Justro, so because there was war in the past, Europeans in America today deserve negative consequences. So right now you're still going way far afield, and we're going to rein this in a little. You don't get to ask any more questions or go off on any more tangents until you actually answer the question I've been posing to you for pretty much since you got here, which is, what exactly is it about these different groups that you object to? Why do you object to them? Until you actually provide some reason why, you don't get any other questions, you don't get to take us on any other tangents, because you're refusing to answer it, probably because you know that when you do actually give an answer, if you are honest, it's going to demonstrate that you're horribly racist. So unless you have some other answer to offer, you don't get to go any further. Because I'm not going to let you just dodge the question all night by trying to distract and deflect and ask other questions and go on different tangents. So if the next thing out of your mouth is not an answer to the question, what is it about these people you object to that makes you object to them, you get muted for 10 minutes and then you can try again later. But you need to give a definitive answer to that, and the reason I won't accept your other responses is because you have not answered the question that I have posed. So you tell me, since you specifically said Africans shouldn't come here, you specifically said people from South America shouldn't come here, you don't just get to say because their culture is different. You have to say what it is about their culture you find different. You need to have some actual reason why accepting these people as immigrants should not be allowed. Not some, and I'm going to kind of run roughshod over you here for a second, not some bullshit sideways attempt to disguise racism by saying it's culture, it totally matters. So you either tell me exactly what it is that you find objectionable about these people or you get muted. Okay, you had to go there. Okay, mute. You have been muted by me for 10 minutes. You can come back after that and actually answer the question, or you can decide you're not going to come back. But I'm not going to have you taking this all over the place and trying to do every dodge in the book to avoid admitting you're racist. You either have to say it plainly, in which case you'll get called a racist, but at least you'll be honest, or you can just say, you know what, I have no actual reason for this, in which case maybe you should rethink your stance. But we're not going to play this game where you vomit racist sideways commentary into the channel here, spreading that garbage without at least being able to admit that you're being racist. And if you're not being racist, you don't get to continue without explaining a reason that demonstrates that all the racist stuff you've been posting up till this point is not racist. So anyway, yeah, Lollipoposaurus, thank you, sir. I'm doing my best to respect your opinions, and so far it seems you're doing the same, so yay, but I was just thinking that I really have no idea what religion my neighbors are, aside from the church down the block and the mosque a few streets over. It just doesn't matter to me. seems like a perfectly reasonable stance, Lipoposaurus. And I'm sorry to have interrupted your conversation with the other commenter there, with Young, but he just would not answer a question. This is my channel. If I ask you a question, you need to answer it. You need to not just keep dodging and throwing thinly veiled racism into the channel. So, Joe Slime, thank you for at least asking the question about the difference between atheism and agnosticism. Another thing people don't realize about atheists is, generally speaking, we don't, we don't want to tell people you can't believe whatever you believe. We just don't want your beliefs pushed on us. We don't want your beliefs legislated into laws that we have to follow. Because again, we don't believe in gods because we do not see any evidence that they actually exist. So what you think of, maybe, let's say you're a Christian who is pro-life and wants to see abortion banned, from the perspective of an atheist, it's no different than what you would object to about, for example, a Muslim wanting to implement Sharia law here. Because if you're a Christian, you don't believe the Muslim faith is true, and you have not seen evidence that makes you, that you find convincing that Islam is true, so you would not want that set of laws forced upon you. Atheists feel that way about all religions' laws, just one more than you might, because, we don't share your particular religious belief. And I'm going to blow my nose now, so forgive me for honking on camera. I'm a little bit congested today. Oh. I think I need to modify how the stream handles timing people out, because I didn't want it to actually purge the channel of everything that Young said. I wanted his stuff to remain so that he could refer back to whatever it was that was said earlier, but I'm not sure how to modify that. And I'm not sure those can be recovered either. Hang on a second. Let me see if there's any... Manage moderation settings. What does that do for me? Ooh, okay. Yikes. Okay, that's more complicated stuff than I wanted to get into now. So yeah, we're just gonna see about going back to the actual chat. No, go back to chat. What'd I do? I've lost the chat. Hold on a second. What happened? Why? Why you do this to me? Huh. Okay, that's frustrating. What's this do? Alright. So, sorry, chat, I can't see you. I've managed to click something in the control panel that has totally botched chat on me. So that's not good. I'm trying to restore it. It's fighting me on this. Oh my god, what is going on here? Alright, I don't know what's going on with that stupid thing. What did this thing do to me? Why? Why? Ermagerd. Okay. So I'm using the chat function in the in OBS to see this. Hang on a second. I may have to pop something out in the regular one here. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Alright, I'll have to try and fix that garbage later because it's pissing me off. And I'll just get the chat out of the actual control center. Yada yada. Pop out chat. Yeah. Oh, come on. It's not going to let me see the old messages now. Oh, Twitch, you're killing me. Killing me, Smalls. Killing me. Ermagerd. Wow, that's frustrating as hell. All right, well, it just lost everything in chat for some reason because Twitch is cranky. So whatever you've said in the past 2 minutes, if you could repeat it, please, because I have no way of restoring this, which is irritating as hell. Wow. So you can't pop out chat without it actually trying to clear the whole thing on you, which is irritating as shit. Oh, that's so angering. All right, well, I have no idea what I lost here, so again, if you said something in the past, like 2 or 3 minutes, if you would repost it. Not much has been said. Okay, Joe Slime, thank you. This is so cranky pants. All right. Wow. Oh, technology, how thy vexeth me. First I said you can't prevent all messages from being nuked when you time someone out. That's really unfortunate. That is really unfortunate. You would think that a timeout would just silence them from adding new stuff rather than deleting all their old stuff, but I guess I don't get to make that decision. So, alright, by the way, I would ask that if anybody here has not followed yet, if you're enjoying the channel, that you give it a quick follow. I do appreciate that. It's nice, and if I reach 50, they might actually offer me an affiliate status here, which would be super cool. That's sort of the stepping stone on Twitch where you know that your channel is finally off the ground. And I need 50 followers to hit that threshold. So if you are so inclined, if you want to hit the follow button, I would really appreciate it. Live Papasaurus, we were just saying you can't rescue the chat gems young Jastro was dropping. Yeah, you know, I feel kind of bad because I get the sense that he legitimately does not understand why what he was saying sounds so racist. You know, like if there's, let's say you're talking about, you know, abracadabra Stan, okay, whatever, and you know the religion they practice there is cargo cult faith, which is a strange thing from the southeast, like Oceania, Southeast Asian seas area. And somebody from that country wants to immigrate here, unless you can say, you know, I object on a cultural basis because their country or their culture includes this specific characteristic that I object to, then you're not providing any explanation. You're just saying, I don't like these people, and that's why they shouldn't come here, and that's bigoted. That's racist. So I kept pushing for, you know, for Young to give some kind of explanation about why it is that he thinks people from Africa should not come here, why it is he thinks people from South America should not come here. But all he would say is these broad, non-specific things about it's their culture. Okay, what about their culture? But he never would explain. And I got to ask, you know, kind of the am I the asshole question? Do you folks understand why asking for that level of detail is important, or am I just nitpicking here? Like, somebody clue me in. You know, am I being a nitpicky asshole, or is it legitimate to want to know what specifically he objects to about certain people? Getting a little nervous based on the delay here. Legitimate. He was being a knucklehead. Okay, thank you. Yeah, because, you know, I really didn't want to just come out and say you're being a racist dickhead. But the number of ways he pushed back leaves me to conclude that either he's A, legitimately so clueless that he doesn't understand that what he's saying is racist, or B, so aware that what he's saying is racist that he can't actually state his reasons because he knows that the immediate reaction will be what amounts to get the fuck out of here, you racist. You know? So I'm not sure which way that's going to go, but I tried several times and I said to him, you know, we're not going on all these weird ass tangents and you don't get to ask a lot of questions and try to redirect the conversation until you answer this one question. You know, my stream, my rules. And if he's not willing to answer it, then he gets a timeout, which he did. And when he comes back, I hope he is willing to either honestly explain what it is about these cultures or different people or groups or religions that he finds objectionable, or admits he's a racist, or goes away. Neither one of those options is socially acceptable. I know it's a tough. He painted himself into kind of a corner there. Predictions for the 2020 election. Well, by the way, I have a little poll down below the stream screen. If you scroll down, you can pick whichever candidate you think should win the primary for the Democrats. My prediction for the 2020 election is that the Democrats have an uphill battle. For two reasons. One of which is it's always difficult to beat an incumbent. Okay. Secondly, the Republicans have shown a great willingness and ability to interfere with, rig, and otherwise fuck up an election. You're getting reports from all over the country about people being expunged from the registered voter rolls in their states with no notification being sent to them. The Republicans redistrict the shit out of their areas to gain advantages that are not indicated by population representation. You have them being perfectly willing to work with the Russians to affect the election, to spread disinformation on social media. So I think that between the fact that the Republicans have an incumbent sitting president and the fact that they are willing to cheat and abuse power and do anything necessary to affect the outcome, that the Democrats are going to have a hard time. Add on top of that you only have a couple of candidates in that roster of Democratic hopefuls that stand a chance of gaining the kind of popularity among left-wing and centrist voters that Trump has with his right-wing contingent, and we got a real problem because, if you listen to the Republicans whining during the discussions on the impeachment, they kept saying things like, "This is the duly elected president. This is the duly elected president." What nobody seemed to want to bring up is he actually lost the popular vote by over 3 million votes. The actual vote, the person that the people who voted actually wanted in the White House by majority was Hillary Clinton. But the system is set up in such a way where by playing the game the way the Republicans did, they can still get their hands on the White House in direct contravention of what the American people want. So that's a very difficult thing. And at this point, I think the only two candidates in the Republican or in the Democrat roster that stand a chance of gaining the popularity that would be needed to beat Trump would be Sanders and Warren. Sanders, the minute he steps foot onto a stage, stadiums just magically seem to fill up with supporters. He has the charisma, he has the honesty, he has the proven 50-year track record of doing what he says that would make him a strong candidate. Warren, not as solid, but still very popular with her supporters. She would struggle because she's female. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a female president. I do think that there are a lot of Americans who do feel that a woman in the White House is an objectionable idea, and that's an obstacle she has to overcome that a male candidate would not. I think the second worst thing that could happen would be to run Joe Biden, because he's so establishment and so boring and so uninspirational that you would never get enough people to the polls to defeat Donald Trump. Joe, I'm interested in hearing why, but one thing you can't deny about at least Sanders, for example, is that the minute he appears anywhere, a virtual army of people show up to see him. He definitely has a huge popularity with the voting base. But yeah, Biden running would be the second worst thing that could happen because he's so bland and uninspiring and everything. And so obviously, why am I drawing a blank on this word? He's so establishment that he would not seem to be different enough to merit getting the people out to the polls. The worst possible thing that could happen would be Hillary Clinton deciding to try to enter the race as a late horse. Because, and I said this before, as soon as I found out that they were running her against Trump last time, I called it for Trump. I said nothing gets Republicans to the polls faster than their hatred of the name Clinton. So if she were to enter the race as a latecomer and become the nominee, pretty much get ready for 4 more years of Trump. Lollipoposaurus, that's why Trump's team is focusing on tiny rural areas to stack the local, state, and that's national tally. even if he has no shot at winning metro areas' popular votes. Yeah, Team Trump is very, very savvy about electioneering. There's no question. That's the only reason he's in the White House, is because he had great strategists and had a plan to basically appeal to the hatred of the people. Um, because selling hate and anger is easy. But beyond that, they had brilliant strategists, and this is something the Democratic Party is like decades behind on. Um, they have not polished their messaging. They haven't got the unity that the Republican Party has. Like, if you take a look at the votes, there were stragglers and dissenters among the Democrats, zero among the Republicans. If there's one thing Republicans have, it's an ability to lemming the living fuck out of themselves and all march in the same direction at the same time, regardless of the consequences. They are committed. Okay? And the Democrats just haven't gotten there yet. They do not have that ability to say, here's the goal, all of us are marching toward it. And that is a weakness that the Republicans exploit. Well, almost of those guys are in jail, so he's got a new team now. Yeah, well, let's hope his new team is not as effective as his old one. I was thinking I might end the stream fairly soon, but I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of curious to see what happens when Young comes back, to see if he will give a better answer, a more clear and explanatory answer than he gave before, or whether it's going to be more of the same. There is a downside to independent thought, though, I suppose. And that is the difference. Republicans don't tend to be individual thinkers. But when it comes to... no, we're not sure he's coming back, but there's still some time left on his timeout. I'm trying to give him time to come back and see if he says something. When it comes to politics, there's an old saying, I can't remember if it's from a Book of Five Rings or The Art of War by Sun Tzu or whatever, but it basically amounts to, it's easy to win a war when only one side knows it's happening. Okay? And the Republicans treat politics as all-out war. And the Democrats haven't realized it yet. They do not respond as if they're actually fighting a war. They respond as if they're in a political situation where their opponents see them as co-equal. And that's not the way the Republicans see anybody else at all. And as long as the Democrats keep living in this fantasy world where they think Republicans are reasonable and where they think Republican politicians will compromise and such, they're going to have a hell of a harder time doing anything than they would if they accepted reality. Looks like Young dipped out. Let's go to the videotape. Users in chat. Yep, he bailed. Okay, so I'll stick around for you guys if you want to continue the conversation. I am not surprised that he bailed. At this point, if he didn't want to stick around to try to explain himself, he was probably here just to troll the whole time. The Steele dossier was reasonable. Where's that question coming from? Actually, I may have to end soon. My dog is starting to give me the I need to go out and poop sound. Hold on a second. So if you're talking about the evidence that came out that Russia and Trump's teams were in communication and working together, I think it's good that we know it. I think it's good that that information is available. Can you guys hear my dog on the microphone? I think that the American public is definitely stuck in a lesser of two evils situation at the moment, Lollipoposaurus. Claiming that it's only the Republicans, the ones who fight dirty, is where I'm going with that. I don't think Republicans are the only ones who fight dirty. I think they fight a lot dirtier and a lot more frequently than the Democrats do. That's subjective, but it's the evidence seems to bear it out. Okay, I am going to have to wrap up. My dog definitely wants to go outside, and I love you guys, and I appreciate you all being here, but I don't want to have to clean up poop in the house. So that kind of makes the decision for me. Let me see if there's somebody interesting to raid tonight. Hold on just a minute. Who is around to raid this fine evening? Who's around that's a good one? No. Oh my gosh, Bella, give me just a minute. Just a minute. What is going on? Huh. Alright, what's this one? I want to find something interesting for you guys. No. Oh my gosh, Bella, take it easy. I'll be with you in a second. Okay, so totally non-political, but very fun. It's whoops, not mean to do that. Let's mute that channel. Of course, there's an ad before it, right? But let me see if I can read this channel. No. They moved everything around in the background here. There it is. Okay, so this is Texas Wildlife. It's a guy who has these night vision cameras out in his backyard, and you can see all kinds of cool animal stuff going on there, and, you know, animals eating food and drinking water and interacting, and deer and stuff. So you guys have a good night. I'll be back on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. with this, and I will see you again next time. Let's start the raid, and please say hi to the person and be, you know, friendly. They usually have the husband or wife in that channel hanging around and watching. So y'all have a good one. I will see you next time.